In a world filled with sharks, bears, and killer bees, one man is brave enough to stay indoors to bring you the latest in gaming, movie, and pop culture news. That man is Tom Awesome, and this is the Outside is Overrated podcast.
Hello and welcome to Outside is Overrated, a podcast about gaming and nerd pop culture. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm your host, Tom Sidlogic, and we've got a great show lined up for you. Today, we are geeking out over Star Wars board games. We'll break down Star Wars the Deckbuilding game, Star Wars Villainous, and Star Wars the Clone Wars. Joining me for the discussion today are the Hobbybox, Joe Burns.
Heyo.
And Mrs. OiO, Phoenix Sidlogic.
Hello.
Welcome back to the show, guys. Burns, you recently went to Gen Con. Now, would you say that it's a gaming mecca that every board game enthusiast must visit at some point in their lives, or an overwhelming slog through the most populous gaming moment of the year where you can't see or do anything you want to do because of the sheer massive humanity?
I would say it's a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. I mean, it is a good experience, and the guys that I went with were definitely glad that we attended, and I especially am glad I attended this year because it's they're redoing or updating, revising the 5th edition rules for Dungeons and Dragons, and I was able to pick up a player's handbook 7 weeks before release. So nice. That's nice to have that, and I've been sort of looking through it and checking out what some of the changes are and some of the new things are. So it's been nice. I'm glad I went this year, but it is just a massive amount of people. When you have 71,000 people filling up a massive convention hall, large portions of multiple hotels, as well as like a lot of the areas of the Indianapolis Colts football stadium, you know that it's just a massive, massive event. So 71,000
people, that is 24 times the size of our hometown, Mora, Minnesota. Yes. 24 times the size of our entire hometown gathering for this. Phoenix, we watched a video of like the doors opening for the first time and the massive humanity surging in.
Yeah.
Are we ever going to Gen Con?
I would say no. It's hard for me to deal with massive crowds like that, being pushed around, trying to get in. It zaps my energy very quickly. I don't like holiday shopping because if I get into a store, it's busy. I drain quickly. So I would love to go to a board game convention, but something like that is just hard for me to even try to get through a full day of. But I don't know if you would recommend any that are smaller, that are easier access?
So, yeah, I mean, and it's funny that you bring up the holiday shopping because, I mean, walking through the vendor hall just felt like Black Friday shopping with people just, everybody's going in different directions, and then people are just like mauling around the same few booths trying to buy things, and heaven forbid there's like any giveaway or promo because it was crazy. You'd walk around like the outside of the vendor hall area, like the edges of the vendor hall area, and there'd just be a line like along the wall, and you're like, what are these people lining up for? And it's like there was one of the booths was giving away free whatevers.
Okay.
And it was just people were just lined up. And then like a little while later we were walking around and there was this dice place, and we're like, oh, look at these dice. And we walk in and we like start messing around with them and ask about them and stuff like that. And then we realized that like that was the line that everybody was waiting to get into, and we just kind of barged into it accidentally. But it's just like, I didn't want the stuff anyway.
Yeah.
But it's just ridiculous. Like, heaven forbid, nerds in a deal are going to just flock to it.
Yes.
So you've got that happening in multiple places and just thousands of people around it. It's just insane. But I would say out of the gaming conventions I went to, and the one that would probably be more your speed would be Gamehole Con in Madison, Wisconsin. It's always around Halloween time. I don't think it's been on Halloween since the pandemic, but there was a couple of times where it was like Halloween weekend.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But yeah, it's D&D and board game focused. And so, you're going to get a lot of the same stuff as Gen Con. There's a lot of people that go there that go to Gen Con. It's just a lot smaller. It's like maybe 10,000 people at GameholeCon. I'm not 100% sure. So
only 3 times our hometown. That's much more manageable.
Yeah,
and it's a lot closer to drive to.
Yeah, it is.
Like, that's the other thing we realized, because, I've been to Adepticon a bunch of times, and, that's in Chicago, but it's surprising how much 3 more hours of a drive just is that drive is just longer, in all ways. So, but, I don't know. It's crazy. Like, I walked 32 miles over 3 days. And so it's just, it was just a lot. And like, you're just surrounded by people for most of that. So it was, I don't know. It was a crazy experience. Like, I thought I was prepared, because I've been to a bunch of different conventions before for video games or for tabletop games or for, like D&D and board games. But this was just like all of those combined and still more people probably. It was just, it was insane.
Yeah. Did you see much kids or families, or is it just people without...
Oh, yeah. There were kids. There were people pushing strollers around.
Oh, were there? Okay.
Yeah, there was. And, of all of the gaming conventions I've been to, like, this was probably the highest population of women that I'd seen at a gaming convention. Oh, okay. So it actually was, like, a real good mix of people. Okay. And... I mean, there was definitely a lot of different vendors of all sorts of different things. From your mundane, from your, like, materials for gaming and stuff like that, to, your more adult-centered, artists, or, people being able to get, like, elf ears put on, or cat ears, or, buying drawings of very well-endowed cat women, and, all those things, bunny girls, fox girls, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. So, I mean, it's the gamut of nerding culture, and for better or for worse.
Oh yeah.
Or just very different. And so that's the thing, like, because some of my friends were looking for things for their kids, and they're like, if you take the top half of that picture, it would have been perfect for my daughter, but yeah, we don't need that.
Yeah, we don't need that portion.
Well, speaking of that portion, like, Feeny, you've been reading just a ton of fantasy romance books.
I was wondering if you're going to pick up on that.
Have you consumed all of the Smut on planet Earth at this point?
No, I am not. There's too much.
It's fine if you have. This is a safe space. We can talk about it.
I know it's a safe space, but no, I have not.
Was it nature or unfiltered when we talked about synchronized cornholing? Oh.
I think it was unfiltered, yes.
Yeah, well, there's your reason to pay $10 a month to support Outside is Overrated on Patreon. Well, what are some of the series and authors that you've been enjoying?
Series are nice to get into because you get more of a storyline, complex stories, but sometimes I'm just like, I don't want to commit, because I started reading this one and I thought it was 3, but it turned out it's 9. And I'm like, I got done with the first 2 main couple of the 3, and then it shifted to a secondary character, and that will be the next 3. I'm like, I don't think I want to keep going right now. So I found a woman, Lola Glass, who's written standalone books, but each character so there's 3 Dragon brothers, and you follow each of their story and stuff. So that was kind of a nice pace to do a standalone, but you see other characters that you can read the next book about. And I just finished her series about the Fae Kings, but the one that I love the most is Alexis Calder. I'm probably butchering her last name, but she wrote a 4-book series about 2 characters, but as each book progressed, there was more and more Greek mythology in it. So that was really fascinating, because it's like trying to remember. My mom read to us all the Greek stories when we were kids. She just read them all to us. I fell in love with Greek mythology, and I want to dig more into mythology, but I haven't. Sort of been on the back burner. But so it was fun to read it, to just have her integrate a lot of Greek mythology, and me trying to like, oh, I remember that. I sort of remember that story. And so I really liked her series. The Kingdom of Blood and Salt is the first book. So
awesome. And we've talked about reading at least one book or one series together. What's the one that we're going to share the experience?
Well, that one isn't as spicy as far as I've heard, but...
Then what are we doing, honey? What's the point?
He wants the full Monty.
Well, my question to you...
Dudes.
You've read a lot more fantasy, and there's this author out there, Sarah J. Maas, I think is how you say her last name, but she's written 2 series, and one is ACTAR, I think is the acronym. And it's a Beauty and Beast retelling. And everyone seems to love that series. But there's this other series that people say is even better, but a lot of people don't talk about it as much, is the Throne of Glass series. So I was just curious if we read it together. Because I think it's sort of young adult with adult fiction. It's edging between the two, and so
So it's young adult with like adult sex.
Maybe, yes.
All right.
I don't know, but I wanted to get a feel what you would think, what your thoughts are on this type of, series,
Yeah, what do you feel about edging, Tom?
I don't understand the term. I do feel that George R. R. Martin is never going to write another book that I care about.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. I know there's some controversy with, I think it's the Throne of Glass series, but I think one character disappears because they get pregnant. I'm sorry if hopefully fans don't get upset, and I'm not remembering this, but
it's at Phoenix Logic OiO on Instagram.
But supposedly some women have had issue when she made a character pregnant, they disappear. You don't hear. She was a warrior or something, but all of a sudden she's not in the picture anymore because she was pregnant. So
well, you're a mother. What do you think about that? Like, I mean, life goes on as a pregnant person, but suddenly you're not. That's not the focus of your existence anymore.
Well, it is interesting when you write about women, warrior, strong women, but I guess people feel like once they get pregnant, they're done for, they're done and gone. But I think that is some of the drawbacks some women have with books. If you continue a character, is that once they settle down, you can't write about them anymore or something. So it'd be interesting if there is someone that created a woman character that's had family. She has to guard the kids, and be pregnant and fight. And so
See, I was just imagining that was while she was pregnant, she disappeared. It's like, how would you feel if you're 8 months pregnant, like wielding a sword and just like trying to hew through people and
Well, I mean, there is the thing where women, it can cause if they do a lot of activity, you can do some, but at a certain point you can't do much, and because it could affect the fetus and stuff. But no, it is kind of fascinating that there is a sort of controversy out there.
Yeah.
So
Bernsey, what do you think? You on board with this? Are we going to do this as an unfiltered topic? You going to read a fantasy romance, romantasy book with us?
I already have a pretty extensive backlog of books that I'm trying to get through. I'm going to hedge my bets towards no. That'd be a good one to have Kelsey on for the third wheel of that one.
Yeah.
Do you want to guess how many books Kelsey has read this year?
I'm guessing it's an astounding amount. I mean, it sounds like you've read a ton of books too this year.
Yeah, I'm up to about 35 now.
Yeah.
So, but
in 8 months, that's 4 a month. Kelsey's at 86.
But
Jeez.
Some of them are audiobooks. So, I mean, a lot of people that talk about reading, they're like, 3 of them are on audiobook while they're doing stuff. So, and then there's
the only audio format that counts is podcasting. So like audiobooks do not count for reading.
I can't do audiobooks.
Really?
It's just like it's one of those things where my level of focus, especially when it's something that's like I want to catch all the details of, it just doesn't work just from a solely audio perspective. It's one of those things where if I was going to be listening to an audiobook, I'd also need to be reading the book at the same time in order to fully grasp it. Because my brain just doesn't really work that way. Like when I was in church back in the day and they'd do like the readings and stuff like that, I could sit there and listen to it. But if I wasn't reading along with it in the book, it just wouldn't. My ADHD, it just doesn't sink through like the morass of things in my head. Or like, and I've tried listening to audiobooks before, and I have to rewind constantly because it's like I'll zone out for a minute and I feel like I missed like an entire thing that happened. And so, I tried listening to an audiobook once and I had to rewind so many times. It was just like, Whereas like podcasts, there'll be a time here or there where it's like maybe I zoned out and missed something. But otherwise, most of the time you kind of feel like you're getting the gist of it, as you're listening to it, whether it's like super focused in or just kind of catching it in passing. So,
well, let me put you on the spot here, Burns, because I love to do that. If you had to choose, you have to consume the Silmarillion again, or all of Earth will perish. You have to consume the Silmarillion again. Are you going to read that someday again, or are you going to do the audiobook?
Or Cliff Notes.
No, not an option.
It's funny to me because I'm still astounded that Pat said he thought the audiobook was so good with the Silmarillion. And it's like, when I read the Silmarillion, I was taking so much time going back and forth between the text, the footnotes, the back of the book glossary, like constantly as I was reading to try to keep track of all this crap. I don't know how you do that in an audiobook. Like, I felt like I was reading an audiobook as I was reading the book, having to go bounce between these like 3 different parts of it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I would probably read it again.
I mean, you probably just put it on loop and like listen to it nonstop when you sleep for like 7 years, and then maybe you'll
consume it.
Yeah, maybe then you'll grok it in fullness.
Or maybe it would consume you.
Oh, maybe.
I wake up and I'm like Gollum. It's like, I got to listen to my precious.
The key takeaway here is that the Silmarillion sucks, and Pat is absolutely silly for enjoying that book.
The Silly Marillion.
The Silly Marillion. Before we jump into our main show, we'd like to thank our sponsor, Premier Health. Check out their website at premierhealthmn.com. That's premierhealthmn, as in Minnesota.com. We invite you to follow all of us on social media. First, and most important, please support the show at patreon.com/OiO. That's patreon.com/OiO. You can back our show for as little as $2 a month and help us pay for all of the media that we consume and the other assorted costs that go along with the podcast. You can also follow us all. You can email the show at overratedpod@gmail.com. Overratedpod@gmail.com. You can catch me at Tom Sidlachik OiO on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Follow Burns at HobbyBoxBurns on X and twitch.tv/HobbyBoxBurns. Follow Phoenix at Phoenix Sidlachik OiO on Instagram, or follow the show at facebook.com/outside-is-overrated. All right, for our first segment, we're going to talk about Star Wars, the deck building game. It released in 2023. It was designed by Caleb Grace, who has 130 design credits, including Marvel Champions and Lord of the Rings, the card game. Burns, you love Marvel Champions. Phoenix, you love Lord of the Rings, the card game. I was not surprised to see it was the same designer across all 3 of these things. Yeah. It was published by Fantasy Flight Games, and it has a Board Game Geek rating of 7.9. I have a lengthy description from the product website that I'm going to read off now. The Rebel Alliance fights valiantly against the tyranny of the Galactic Empire. Each new victory brings the Rebels hope, and each heroic sacrifice strengthens their resolve. Still, the Empire's resources are vast, and the firepower of its Empire Navy is unmatched. I believe that should be Imperial Navy.
Yes.
With neither side willing to accept defeat, their war rages across the galaxy. In Star Wars, the deck-building game, a head-to-head game for 2 players, the galaxy-spanning war between the Galactic Empire and the Rebel Alliance comes alive on your tabletop. In this easy-to-learn game, you and your opponent each choose a side, playing as either the Empire or the Rebels, and as the game progresses, you both strengthen the power of your starting decks and work to destroy each other's bases. The first player to destroy 3 of their opponent's bases wins. Boy, this is really long. We're halfway there, guys. In more detail, each player starts with a unique 10-card deck with 7 of those cards providing only resources to acquire new cards. 6 cards from a Galaxy deck are always on display, with Rebels facing their player, Empire cards facing their player, and neutral cards facing sideways. You can spend resources to acquire new cards in the Galaxy row that don't belong to your opponent, and you can use attack power to take out the cards that do belong to them to earn a reward. Players fight for control of the Force to trigger special abilities, and to just boil it down here, this game is a deck-building game. Each player starts with 10 cards that generate money and attack power. Then you buy cards, which give you more money, more attack power, or special abilities. What makes Star Wars the deck-building game unique is that roughly 80% of the cards can only be purchased by their own faction. So, Rebels can buy Luke, Leia, Han, and all the Rogue One dudes, and only the Empire can buy Vader and Star Destroyers.
That was actually the text from Fantasy Flight 2 for their marketing?
Yeah, no, the last...
One dudes?
I would say that was more Tom-infused.
Oh, okay.
Tom-inspired. Thank you for the clarification.
That was a tonal shift there. It's like the marketing guy knew it was too long. All right, we just got to wrap this up.
Well, I took all the marketing stuff, and I felt out of an obligation to the game that we should read. And then, okay, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So what is this thing? Here's what a deck builder is. Phoenix, you have grown to love deck builders. Did you enjoy how the card buying mechanic worked in the Star Wars deck builder, where Rebels can only buy Rebel cards?
Yeah, I truly enjoyed this game. We've played a few deck builders in the past, and I've always struggled with them because the nuances of the cards, you have to read them and understand what they mean. And so when we played Ascension and Thunderstone, and it was hard because it was you and me against each other, where Lord of the Rings Living Card Game, we played together and you could help me figure out what the best strategy is. For some reason with this game, it clicked for me. I got a grasp for it quickly, and I just got on a roll and really enjoyed it. And so it was great to learn more about buying cards. It felt simpler to me versus Ascension, but we've gone back and I've enjoyed that a lot more. So,
and I agree, and I think what really streamlines this and makes it so accessible for newer players is the faction-specific cards, because there's always 6 cards up top, which is standard deck building fare. Like, there's usually a bank of cards that you can purchase, but with only a handful of those being relevant to you, like, it cuts down the options that you have to worry about. Like, a Rebel player never has to wonder if they should spend 7 for Vader, 7 for a Star Destroyer, or a couple other smaller things. It's like, oh, well, I can buy this neutral guy, or this red guy, or this red guy, or this neutral guy. A little bit easier to break down.
Yeah, you stated perfectly. I guess that helped bring out some complexity of trying to be cute or try to overthink things. So I think I agree. It helped me to just focus on specific cards and learning this game quickly. And so again, it just clicked for me and I really enjoyed it. So,
and Burns, if I remember right, Cowboy Bebop Space Serenade is your absolute favorite game of all time. We'll go back and listen to the Cowboy Bebop show to verify, but you have a rich history with deck builders. How does this compare to that timeless classic?
No, I mean, I haven't played a ton of deck building games.
Sorry, let me interrupt you right there. Is that because you don't particularly like the mechanic, or you just haven't really picked it up for whatever reason?
Yeah, just haven't been around those types of games. I mean,
is it because you hate fun?
No, it's more so just those. You know, those were like a type of game that were popular like a while ago, it feels like, and then they've kind of jumped up in popularity from time to time as things have gone on, and it's just something that I never really ran into. I guess when I'm looking at buying games, I'm not always looking at like a 2-player count either, because a lot of the times when I'm playing things, it's usually like 3 or 4 or more people.
And I'll clarify there too, that's another thing that makes this deck builder unique.
Yes.
We own several deck builders and they are all multiple players. This is only 2, and there's no way to play with more than 2 people, which I think is interesting.
And Dominion's a deck builder, or is that that's a deck building game also?
Yep, and that goes up to 4 or 5 players.
That's a game I've owned for a long time. I never played. So there's that too. So I guess the one thing that we ran into a couple of times with this game, and I don't know if this happens a lot in other deck building games or if they do things to avoid it, but we've had a couple of times when we played it where the majority of the cards, or all the cards that show up in the Galactic row, at the start of the game are like way too expensive to be able to purchase. Like, you'd have to get all 7 of your like cards in there maybe to buy one of them, kind of thing, you know. And since you only have a hand size of 5, it was really weird how sometimes that would happen. And I'm not sure if that's something that does happen in other games, or are there guardrails that they put in where there's usually cheaper cards out at first, and then as the game goes on, more of the more expensive cards get added in.
We ran into a similar barrier in the Firefly game. I remember all the cards were expensive. We couldn't get our decks built, and we just got hammered because of it. But that's the only specific instance that I can think of here.
Yeah, I mean, with Ascension, there's some very expensive cards, but I don't know if, because we had other, I think there's a single option where we can buy something. But, I mean, this deck builder had the Outer Rim pilot for 2. And that's the thing is, I guess you can try to get a whole bunch of those at the beginning and then exile them so that you can rank up your money fast and then exile them later, which you have done in the past. You know?
And are you just saying that Burns is bad at games? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, I'm just thinking in my head, like, you know, Thunderstone, you have your set cards already out in front of you, so you're buying, you see the different pricings, and where this, it's like, oh, all of a sudden you have all these expensive cards, and you're right, it's like, if you start the game with cards that cost 8, 6, and you only have 3 or 4 in your hand, it's kind of hard to start building up your deck. So it is maybe a little unique, or, that they can come out more quickly, but... And
I think the reason it becomes an issue in this game specifically is just because so many of the cards are tied to a specific faction.
Yeah. That's true, too.
I think, what it comes down to, because I know that's ultimately the fallback, is you just buy the Outer Rim pilot dude, but that's like, you're going to go to the store and buy Cinnamon Toast Crunch,
Yes.
and then instead all you could buy is Malto Meal, right? Like, it's just like, okay, well, I'll just buy this boring, bland, stupid thing, and eventually I can maybe buy something better.
But it'll sustain life long enough so that you can buy your Lucky Charms, my dude.
I think, but the other problem isn't just that, the stuff's too expensive to buy, but what really gets rough, and that I also had happen a couple of the times that I played, was it would be an imbalance of cards towards one side. And that also just gets real problematic, because if the first, say, 12 cards that come out of that, there's one that's specific to one faction and 8 that are specific to the other faction, and a few neutrals in there, some of which are Jabba the Hutt, that's 8 points, and you can't really buy that until far later into the game. It just makes things really difficult to try to have a balanced experience after that, because somebody gets out to a real fast start. Sometimes that can balance out if, there ends up swaying and then the other person has a lot of things to buy, but I don't know. That was one thing that with the purchasing became an issue to me at times, and I don't know how you could try to get around that, if it's just a limitation to the number of cards that are in that pool that go into the Galaxy row. I don't know. I don't know what that difference is compared to the other deck building games, because I haven't really played enough of them to really grasp that. But that's probably one of my biggest concerns with this game, because it can really skew the rest of the experience for that game, like in the very beginning of it.
Yeah, and when you're playing against me, like, I really lean into that. Like, I will do everything I can to manipulate that deck. That was one of my, Galaxy Row, that was one of my go-to tactics. Talking about the neutral cards a little bit more, there are a number of those that filter through the Galaxy Row in the middle. Burns, did you feel like you had ample paths to victory in games when the Galaxy Row wasn't completely stacked against you?
Yeah, I think so. Each side... And so I think each of the factions has, there are one or two unique shticks that you can lean into to utilize. One of them is the Rebels have some cards that'll force the opposing player to discard cards. Empire has a lot of looking at the top of the Galaxy deck to see what's coming, and sometimes it's like discarding opposing players' cards and so on and so forth. So they each kind of have those couple of different things that you can lean into, and then the neutral cards will give you stuff that'll either help you do more damage, especially against the Galactic Road, to shoot the stuff out of it, or things that will help you exile cards kind of later on in the game, which will help you to thin your deck so that you have a more streamlined deck towards what you want. So it does, as those things come up, as long as they come up at the right time and you're able to buy them before your opponent does, give you a lot of options to sort of determine how you want to focus things. If you're going to focus on more defensive, try to get more capital ships out, or if you want to focus more offensive and try to just get a lot of attackers and, things that give you resources so you could buy more attackers or whatever. I feel like there are lots of sort of strategies that you can employ, and I don't think there's a strategy that's better than the other one, or other ones per se.
Yeah, I mean, I agree as far as the sense. The neutral cards really help you if the cards at the beginning are stacked towards your opponent, where there's more of the rebel cards out and you're the Empire, you can at least lean and try to get those neutral cards, and they do help you quite a bit as far as giving you more attack power and other things. So it was nice that they threw something in there so it wasn't just completely Empire and Rebel cards only in the deck. It's nice to have that middle ground. And Jabba, it's interesting he's a neutral card, because I guess he wasn't in the movies one way or the other anyways. So a lot of the neutral cards are either bounty hunters and things that could lean one way or the other. So, but yeah, I liked having them in the deck, so...
Yeah, they were fun. I think there were more synergies on the Empire side. Like, you could focus on troops or vehicles or ships. So I think that it gave, especially the Rebels, a lot more options for the way that you want to attack the game. But I just wanted to reiterate that manipulating that Galaxy Row was just a major tactic for me. That was something that I focused on, which was never ever a detriment.
Well, that's the interesting thing with the neutral cards too, is that you can't kill them in the Galaxy row or take them out, because with the Empire card, if I'm playing the Rebels and there's Empire cards out there, it has a little line at the bottom that says I could kill this card with so many kill points, and then I get a reward from that. And that can also help us cycle through the cards in the middle row if I continuously attack the middle row instead of your base. And also, if, say, Darth Vader's out, I can try to kill him and get him off the table so that my opponent can't buy them.
Yeah, getting those heavy hitters before your opponent can buy them is absolutely essential.
But it's interesting, they don't allow you to kill the neutral cards. They're always going to be out there. So it is interesting that they're there, and they will always be there if you can get your hands on them. So
there is one.
Is there one?
One of the planets, one of the bases for the Empire allows you to kill.
One, okay.
That allows you to kill neutral dudes out of the Galaxy row.
Okay.
And it's just their cost ends up being the difficulty, and I don't think you get a benefit, or maybe you get like one resource or something like that. I can't remember exactly what the card says.
Interesting. I haven't played with that base.
Yeah, I saw it. I never played with it because, I don't know, the other ones I felt like had a better benefit at that moment. But yeah, so, I mean, I think killing stuff out of the central row was a good tactic to use. It was good to try to deny certain characters from the opposing players, for sure. And there are times where, like, getting those extra resources allowed you to buy one of your higher ranked players, or would give you a bunch of force points that would help swing that towards your side, because each side is going to have cards that will give you some sort of benefit when the force is with you. And that's kind of marked by a little sideboard. And then there's a cube that goes up or down to basically say whether the force is, stronger towards the Empire or the Rebels. And if it ever goes, I think it's like 4, so all the way to one side, you get an extra resource each turn to be able to spend on buying things. So that is a thing that ends up falling to the side a lot, but depending upon the types of cards you have, you might really want to try to keep pushing that force in your direction. And
I mean, just for example, if you have Vader, if the force is on your side, his attack jumps from 6 damage to 10, which is enough to wipe out the starter base on either side, which you showed me, thank you, or do significance damage against any of the other bases. So having the force on your side is a big deal.
Yeah, and with Leia, so Leia's ability is she can buy something from the Galactic row for free. And if the force is on your side, it goes to the top of your deck. So that card's basically going to come out next round.
That's right, yeah.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, that's super helpful.
Rafini, we play a lot of deck builders. This specific mechanic is pretty unique, being able to blast things in the middle before your opponent can get them. How long did it take for you to embrace that strategy, or to fully, grok that strategy as a tool in the toolbox in this game?
I don't think I used it quite quickly as you did, because
And do you think that was good or bad? Because we literally had a game where I was so focused on manipulating this middle row that I lost the game because I wasn't doing enough damage to you. Because there's one gray card, the Quarren Mercenary. He has 4 attack, and you get something if you kill things in the middle. So I was just blasting your dudes out of the middle, and you were working on my planets, and I lost because of that strategy.
Yeah, that's, I guess, sort of the downside. If you lean one way completely with this deck builder, you might lose, where you have to try to keep track of both, attacking the base or attacking the middle. So it becomes a balance of trying to figure it out. And so when I was first learning it, I was just trying to learn on buying cards and playing them and attacking the base, where he went heavily against, she can't have these characters, let's get them out. So, but yeah, I think it helps to make things unique and different each time you play, because things can happen differently. It's never the same. So I think it's a unique and important thing to have with this game. So
yeah, and a pro tip: kill Chewbacca before Phoenix can get him. Kill Chewbacca over and over again. Let's talk a little bit about the bases in this game. Each player starts with a basic base that has no special ability. But once that base is destroyed, you get to choose a replacement from your base deck. Each base has a special ability, so in addition to those special abilities, you can also purchase capital ships to absorb the damage that would otherwise go to your base. There are 5 standard bases for each faction, and 5 advanced bases. Generally, in the base game, you play until you destroy 3 of your opponent's bases, we played with both the basic and advanced bases. We played one variation where Burns and I locked in our bases in advance. So Burns, thinking about the entire base system, what stands out to you about the bases on either side?
Yeah, they're a very interesting wrinkle within the game. I think locking the bases in advance completely destroys the point of having them. Because then it's just like you don't know if the ability that you get from the base is going to be helpful in the game that you're playing later on.
For example, the one you locked in would allow you to buy a card from the center row for free, which sounds awesome, and especially if like one of your heavy hitters is out there. Yep. That's a huge win. You didn't have anything up on the board, so you got literally no benefit from having that base.
Yep, there was like 4 Imperial things out there and 2 neutrals, so I couldn't buy anything for free. So I literally got no benefits from it, and I think that one had less health on the base too because of the benefit that you get for it. And so then it's just like, okay, well, I'm literally just making it easier for you to defeat me by that. And so yeah, I think even going in, you can have an idea that this is a strategy I'm going to employ and throw, 3 bases, however many bases you want to put in there into an order. But I think it completely defeats the purpose of it because I think the abilities on the bases give you things that are either going to help you seal your victory or try to claw yourself back if, oh shoot, that base disappeared a lot faster than I wanted it to. I'm going to throw this out to try to slow things down. So like for the Rebels, you could throw Hoth out there. So the first time, for every attack that comes at it, it absorbs 2 damage before it would go to the planet. And so that at least helps try to slow things down if you're working on trying to build up your shtick or try to get more stuff if someone gets an early lead. One of the planets that I really liked using, and I don't remember which planet it was, but for the Rebels, is every time you forced your opponent to discard a card, their
Yavin.
base would take 2 damage.
It's Yavin.
Okay, it is Yavin 4. And so that was really cool because it was, if you ended up getting a bunch of those cards, like the Snowspeeder is one of them that forces them to discard. It's one of the other like Rebel Commandos, I think it was, or something like that. And it's just like, okay, like as long as I have a few of those cards and they're going to keep coming out, I'm just like chipping away constantly at the opponent. And so yeah, there's definitely things in there. But if I would have locked that one in and I didn't get any of those cards, like they're all in the bottom of the deck, or you killed them before I could buy them, then it's like, well, then that base was kind of pointless to have. But I do think it's cool that like 9 of the bases have unique abilities to them that you can sort of mix and match to sort of to go along with what you're trying to do, and then try to like either seal your victory, like I said, or claw yourself back to try to take a victory from the jaws of defeat.
Yeah, I think that I agree that the bases have a lot of cool abilities, and I'm mostly with you on not wanting to lock them in ahead of time, because
we didn't even get to yours that you locked in, so I guess it didn't matter for you.
That was a killer strategy for me. I've never been beaten. But I agree. I really like being able to apply the right ability at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
Like if there's a heavy hitter in the center row, each side has a base that allows you to buy the card for free and add it to your hand, and like that is potentially crucial right at the same moment. Fanny, did you have anything you wanted to say on bases?
No, you guys pretty much cover them all. I agree. It's nice to have the ability to choose a base, even though I haven't tried the locked in. It's just not knowing what could happen in the galaxy row. It's like, I don't think I want to set I like choosing in that moment what I need to help me win this game. So I think that's the best option. So
yeah, so don't try any of the variations. They're dumb. Now, I know it sounds like a lot with the 2 factions, how the card purchasing works, the bases. In reality, Burns, how accessible is this game?
So, I mean, like any other game, there's always that initial phase where each player is trying to figure out the language of the game and how to best use that, right?
And you had kind of a unique first experience with this game because you played Adam at Board Game Weekend. Neither of you had played before, and I was trying to facilitate for both of you, so you're both coming in blind. And I had a lot of experience with the game, so I was just trying to give you the smoothest experience possible.
Yeah. I think... So 2 of the things that make this accessible, I think the primary thing is, it's a license that people enjoy, people are bought into, and so it's like seeing the cards come up and it's like, oh, it's Han Solo, it's the Millennium Falcon, it's Darth Vader, it's General Veers, an ATST. You're seeing things that you have an affinity for. And so that immediately kind of draws you into the game, and you can kind of visualize these things fighting it out, in your head. And that's like the cards you're trying to buy so that you can employ that in the game. I think then the second part of that also makes it accessible is that even though each card has an individual ability on it, they all kind of fall into, for each faction, like 2 or 3 or 4 types of cards. So whether it's going to be forcing the opponent to discard, or for you to scry and see what's coming up, or increasing damage, or generating cards, or anything along those lines. There's like very specific things that they're doing. And it's pretty straightforward. It's not like Magic the Gathering, where it's like every single card that you could play could have a completely different rule to it. It's pretty focused in on this faction kind of does one of these 2 or 3 things. The neutrals kind of do one of these 2 or 3 things. And so once you learn how that functions and the purpose of that, then you get an idea for that. And then when those two come together, and it's like, oh, this makes sense that this is how the Millennium Falcon would work, because, sure, it's going to be doing this, right? Or this is how Darth Vader would work, because he's very imposing and just does a lot of damage. And so everything kind of makes sense together as well. And I think that all works together in making it accessible and making it easy for people to learn, because they are connected to what's on the cards. It's pretty straightforward as long as they're playing as that one faction, and they play that a couple of times. You'll sort of pick up what they're asking you to do with that faction.
And Feeny, you had a different onboarding experience, as I just scanned the rulebook real quick. We shuffled the cards, gripped it and ripped it. How accessible do you feel this game is?
I feel like it's very accessible, because for me it was the one game that kind of helped me fall in love with deck building games. Before we played a few, I just wasn't strong enough in my competitiveness, and I was lacking in my confidence with the cards and understanding them. But this game, I guess for my affinity for Star Wars and seeing the characters, I was able to grasp the story quickly, and it helped me, focus on the cards instead of is there more that I need to know about this board game? Is there a story that I need to follow? So I think it's very accessible, and I just think if you want to try a deck building game that's just geared towards 2 people, I think it's a very good game to use. And I actually got, I follow this woman on Instagram, Tabletop Family, I think she is. She has 7 kids, and it's her and her partner. So she'll every once in a while talk about games that they just play themselves, and this was one of them that she talked about. So I was like, babe, we gotta try it. So we did.
And so we tried it, and you crushed me in the first 3 games, and each time I was like, fill it up again! I think having the faction-based cards makes it really accessible, because it makes it easier to purchase the cards. It's you might only have 3 options, you might only be able to afford one of those 3, so it's all right, that's the one that goes in, shuffle up, and keep going. And Phoenix, once we've completed this game, how many times do you think we can bring it back to the table?
Keep bringing it back to the table, or do
100 million billion times?
Oh yeah, no. In general, yeah, no. It's we'll be playing a game, a work replacement game, and I'll be staring at the shelf can we play this instead? But so yeah, I'm leaning towards more deck building games, so I'll always suggest something like this for us to play versus a work replacement game.
Oh, so you hate Lost Ruins of Arnak. Okay, got that. So, Phoenix, what were some of your favorite strategies that came out as we played this game? Was there any faction shtick that really stood out with you?
I guess, as far as strategies, I'm still trying to get used to, trying to remember all the strategies and do them. Maybe discarding cards or making the player discard the cards, looking for those cards, and maybe trying to kill more cards in the galaxy row is something I might try to focus on more, instead of just trying to buy the big heavy hitters and trying to destroy bases and stuff. So
nope, I disagree. If I'm playing as Rebels, I want Leia, Luke, Han, and the Falcon. Nothing else.
That's all you want?
That's
Chewie's
all I
pretty
want.
good, though.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed Chewie. Yeah, you killed me with Chewie multiple times. I have nightmares about that Wookiee. I'm not going to go into tremendous detail about what that entails on the microphone. But Burns, what were some of the strategies that you found that stood out to you?
I never got Chewie in any of the games. He was on the Galaxy board once. I think you killed him pretty quickly.
Yeah, because he was dramatic. Yeah,
the PTSD was strong. For me, the one that I found kind of more recently when we've been playing was the discard mechanic with the rebels, and like I said before, pairing that with the base that allows you to do damage when you're making them discard. I just felt like that was a really good way to just try to end the game. Usually that would be the last base I would have that would come out.
Chip damage for the win, right?
Yep.
Super satisfying.
Now, then again, sort of similar to like what you were saying, I had that one turn against Phoenix where I did 22 damage because I had Vader with the Force on my side, General Veers, 2 Stormtroopers, and a Star Destroyer. And so it was like... And I think I played all of them on that turn because it's like those were the 5 cards I got. So it was just like, okay, well...
This is satisfying.
There goes for base.
That's the end of the game. I apologize.
No worries.
So sometimes just getting the big cards out at the same time can do the deed.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that the Empire had some really interesting synergies tied to ships, vehicles, and troopers. One card that I thought was great, Moff Tarkin. When you play him, he gets to pull an Empire card from the center row for free, but then you have to exile it. So it's like you get the free benefit of whatever card is up there. So like if Vader's up there, you can pull Vader, but you get him one time and then he is gone forever. So I just thought that was interesting, and I really like playing the Empire side of this game.
Sounds right. You're evil.
Yeah, that's what people say. I don't know. I mean, Phoenix pursued me, so what does that say about her? Phoenix, how well did Star Wars, the deck building game, capture the Star Wars source material?
I think very well. You expand upon it, it captures all the characters.
Is that because it's only like classic trilogy and Rogue One and like cuts all of that prequel trilogy?
No.
Yeah, I will beat that one. That was worth it.
I think just seeing the characters, remembering them from the movies, what they did, I think it captures the source material very well. So,
I mean, the prequel trilogy is the new, or probably, or to some extent, the Clone Wars anyway, is the new expansion for it. And so, you're gonna eat that up. You'll buy it. You'll love it.
I mean, I'll buy it and I'll play it, but I will not love aspects of it.
Yeah, and apparently the way that you do it is that, so similar to how the base game works, you have, your X amount of neutral cards and then your X amount of Empire and Rebel cards. You'll have an X amount of, what would it be? The
Separatists and Empire,
and your X amount of the Republic, right? Yeah. So you'll have those cards, and basically then you choose 2 of the factions, and then take the neutral cards and you shuffle it together. And so basically you'll choose, I'm going to be the Separatists or whatever, and then someone will choose they're going to be the Rebels, and then you shuffle it all up, and then that's how you play it with the expansion. I saw that today, so I figured I'd throw that in there. But no, I think it's great. I think it does a really great job of capturing that source material, as I talked about before. I don't know. If you're a Star Wars fan, you'll like seeing all the artwork. None of it's like taken from the movies or whatever. It's all actually created art by people. It looks like the movies representation of Luke and Leia and so on and so forth, but it's all actual art that's been done on the cards. It all looks really nice. I think the layout of the cards, the graphic design of everything too is really well done. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's great.
Yeah, captures the classic trilogy vibe really well. Burns, how well does the whole package come together?
Yeah, as long as you don't fall into one of those edge cases that apparently I hit 33% of the time I played the game, I think it's great. I think people will have a really good time with this game. If you're a fan of Star Wars, you definitely should buy it. Especially if, it's like, it's just like you're looking for something to play with, your partner or whatever. Or if you have just times where you're only, getting together with another person, like it's a really good opportunity to have a 2-player game. There's actually, oddly enough, not a ton of 2-player games out there. And so, compared to games for larger player counts. So if you have that, this is a really good option for that.
Yeah, that's one thing. I love this game because it's designed for 2 players. We've made games work where it's 2 to 6 or 2 to 4, but it is kind of nice to get your hands on a game that's designed specifically for 2 players. And I've been noticing out there in the market that game companies are really trying to create... They're taking like 7 Wonders and they made 7 Wonders Duel. Yep. So I think they're finding there is a need to create 2-player games because all of a sudden there's been an explosion of popular games now down
Because
to
our whole
2.
generation of nerds is growing up and getting married, honey. It's finally happened.
Yeah, like Catan Rivals, and just, because that's only 3 player. You have to start with 3 for Catan, Settlers of Catan. And now they came out with Catan Rivals, if I'm saying that right. So, I think they're finding that they need married couples that are getting married need that specifically designed,
And I think a lot of the replayability, you guys talked about it earlier.
Yeah.
Sorry to jump back in. I think a lot of the replayability just comes from the game's pretty quick. Like,
it is.
The game is really quick. Like, after your first, time playing it, you can get through a game, maybe not in the 30 minutes that's printed on the box, but pretty close to it. That's the interesting thing. I was trolling around Board Game Geek today looking at stuff, and I think a lot of people were complaining that it seems like the game's taking over an hour for them.
Really?
But then again, some of those people I saw saying they were playing with 4 bases or something like that, and it's well, if the game says play with 3, that's probably what is more closer to the 30-minute experience as opposed to the 60-minute experience, and also it depends on who you're playing against.
Sure.
If you're playing against, playing Magic against Lance, is always going to be an effort of, he's going to probably just turtle up until he gets 80 characters out and then just attack after that. So if you're playing this game against him, he maybe isn't going to be as aggressive attacking, or focusing on doing that as much as focusing on trying to build up a bunch of things and then dominate after that. So
yeah, that's another reason I like the game. It doesn't seem to take a long time to set up. It doesn't really take a long time to set up, and it doesn't take a lot of our time. So once the girls go down and it's we'd like to play something, but we don't want to take extra time setting up a long board game, so I think this is a great game to throw on the table to play real quickly if you have a moment. I mean, even Radlands is a great game that we've thrown out that is just one of those quick setups and quick games to play, but a lot of replayability to it. So, and
you have to throw one of these 2 games into the lava, honey, or all of Earth will perish. Are you going to throw Radlands or Star Wars: The Deck Building Game into the
right now? It'd be Radlands would go into the.
What about those cool mats, honey?
Well, I know we just haven't played it enough. I've liked the Star Wars deck building game because we've played it a bit.
Those mats will burn nicely in the lava.
Yeah, true.
Indeed, they will. Star Wars: The Deck Building Game is just the best. It's an awesome game. 2 players, so if you have a bigger group than that, you're out of luck. But overall, it's great.
As I mentioned earlier, Gen Con was quite a fatiguing process, and blisters on my feet notwithstanding, it was still one of those things where I took a good amount of pain on my joints and my back and everything like that. So since we've been back here and I've been living in the Star Wars universe since I returned, it really wants me to find a way to increase my midichlorian count so that if I go back to Gen Con or something like that, I can just hover above the masses and float around the convention, convince people to move out of my way while I'm walking. And then that'll spare the wear and tear on my legs and hips and back and so on and so forth. So any idea what can help with that?
Yeah, you can call up Dr. C and have him put on his midichlorian paste and just do his thing. While they can't technically help with fictional DNA enhancements, you should check out Premier Health. They have solutions for back pain, neck pain, car accident injuries, and more. We suggest seeing Dr. Brian Camille in Golden Valley, Minnesota, or Dr. Kelsey Camille in Coon Rapids. Learn more at premierhealthmn.com. That's premierhealthmn as in Minnesota.com. For our next segment, we'll discuss Star Wars Villainous, Power of the Dark Side. This game is designed by Prospero Hall. Prospero Hall is interesting because they're a faceless collective of board game designers in Seattle who collectively do most of the licensed stuff that you see on the shelf at Target. They've done games that we own, including Horrified, Jaws, which we don't own, but Carol, Wonder Woman Challenge of the Amazons, which we played for the Wonder Woman 84 show. They've done a lot of stuff. Michael Mulvihill is also credited as a designer in this game. He has 46 design credits, most of them tied to Golem Arcana. He also designed Horrified and Mage Knight Dungeons back in 2002.
Oh, wow.
This game was published by Ravensburger and has a Board Game Geek rating of 7.1.
So I wonder if that Michael Mulvihill is the guy that created the original Villainous or whatever, and then Prospero Hall is creating all of the expansions after the original Villainous, or maybe it's the other way around. I guess I don't know.
Was Disney the first Villainous? Was that the first one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Probably. I guess I should have done research to...
Pretty sure. I'm like 98% sure that was the first Villainous. And then they made a bunch of expansions, and they made the Marvel one, and then they made the Star Wars one.
Do you think he's getting rich off of that? Because, like, it seems like that would be the golden ticket, wouldn't it, to design something, to build something that Disney buys and then makes $1 billion off of?
I mean... Probably, I guess.
Or do you think it's like a Witcher situation where he sold it for pennies and is failing to reap the benefits?
I'm sure he got paid for it. I'm sure he's not making bajillions. I mean, the margins in the board game, Disney's not making $1 bajillion off of these licensed properties, probably either.
They're making $1 bajillion off of Star Wars.
Off the Star Wars proper, yes, but probably not the Star Wars board games.
So you're saying that anyone who designs board games is an idiot and everyone should just stay in school and be like an engineer?
The amount of people that are making $1 bajillion amount of dollars designing board games is a small amount of people.
Okay.
And it's like... Yeah, there's only probably a few designers that have created things that are actually like just continuously making them money.
So if Tom Brady started designing board games, what do you think his earning potential would be?
I mean, it all depends on how good his games are, because there's a lot of people that aren't going to be super bought into, this guy that plays sports ball. Designing this game, they're not going to necessarily... They'll have heard of Tom Brady somewhere along the lines, but not placed where he was at. So yeah, it'd have to be still a good game for, I think, a lot of board gamers to really get into it.
Who do you think has more earning potential, Tom Brady or Giselle, in the board game design space?
I guess
Francie looks so frustrated right now.
I have no idea. There's no way to answer that. I don't know.
Team Giselle all the way.
In board games?
Uh-huh. Yeah, it just rolls off the tongue. It's magic. So. In Star Wars Villainous, Power of the Dark Side, each player takes control of one of the 5... So I was keeping together so good. Each player takes control of one of 5 Star Wars villains: Darth Vader, Asajj Ventress, Kylo Ren, Moff Gideon, or General Grievous. Each player has their own villain deck, fate deck, player board, and 3D character.
Well, 3D approximation of
it's like a bust.
Well, and it's like a abstract bust of the character.
Vader's pretty good. I like the heads. I thought they were cool.
Yeah, but yeah. Anyway, moving on.
It's just the word bust, it's like... I've always, in the art world, it's like, why are we calling this a bust, Because
when it's not boobs?
Yeah, it's like, where did the term come from? I just think in art classes and stuff, this bust of this, it's like, your brain goes somewhere else, but it's like, where did this term come from?
So where are you on the busty scale of art as, like, from 0 to Brian?
You motorboating son of a bee, you old sailor. You.
On your turn, the active player moves their character to a different location on their player board, takes one or more of the actions visible on that space, often by playing cards from their hand, then refills their hand to 4 cards. Cards include allies, items, effects, and other things. You need to use your cards to fulfill your unique win condition. One of the actions allows you to choose another player, draw 2 cards from their fate deck, then play one of them on that player's board, covering 2 of their action spaces. The fate deck can contain heroes, items, and effects from that villain's storyline, and these cards allow other players to mess with that particular villain. Depending on the villain's unique power, players can also use their villain's ambition to perform actions that power or effects based on the villain's use of the Force, strategic leadership, or sheer luck. The game also incorporates villain-specific missions and rules for iconic ships and transports from all corners of the galaxy. This game is completely asynchronous. Each character has a goal that they are trying to achieve. Now, Burns, I classify us both as very social board gamers. Meaning that we like to interact with other people as we play games. For me, it's a major social outlet. But did you enjoy the core mechanics of this game, whether it was trying to get Kylo Ren to completely commit to the dark side or trying to defeat Luke as Darth Vader?
Yeah, I mean, I think the gameplay is enjoyable once you figure out how to play your respective villain. And that's the trickiest thing about asynchronous games, is just the fact that, you're playing something that nobody else is doing exactly the same thing, like Merchant's Cove, which we've played before and talked about multiple times on these podcasts. it's like that too, where it's like, well, if you have questions on how your dude works, I can try to help you, but I've never played it before, so good luck. I think one aspect of the game is how well the various types of cards and goals reflect sort of that villain's journey through the story that they had in whatever Star Wars property they existed in. But it is always a little strange when you're playing a game and it's like your board's here. That's all you really focus on for like 75% of the time. And everybody else is kind of doing their own thing. It is a little weird, but with the fate mechanic, you're able to still interact with them. So I think that adds in enough of the social aspect to still make it a social gaming experience.
And I'm kind of on the other end of the spectrum. Like, I really wish there was more player interaction. Like, the game that I think of in comparison to Villainous is Scythe, where a lot of the action is on optimizing your board and like covering up the things so that your actions are more powerful. And there's some similarities here, but in Scythe, there's also a little bit of worker placement on the big board, and you have to be concerned about where the other people are. And I struggled with this game because outside of the Fate deck, which I was a little underwhelmed by, there was no interaction with you people. Phoenix, are you more on the Joey side or the Tom side?
Well, I was just going to ask, so there's a specific name for this type of game?
Yeah, I think it's just asynchronous, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, asynchronous in general basically just means that, you're not all doing the same thing. It's not all the same. Everything plays a little bit differently.
Okay, I wasn't sure if this fell into a certain category of board games, but...
It's a mechanic for sure.
Okay.
Asynchronicity is a mechanic that some people will employ in games.
Okay.
It's not a lot because it's really hard to try to make that balanced.
So, like, I guess with Scythe for you, because you have the one big board that everyone is placing pieces, right? And you have just one single card and thing.
Well, for Scythe, imagine like your Villainous player board, and you have that in front of you, and you're trying to cover things up to optimize it. But then there's also the big board, and like there's different resources on different spaces, so you're trying to maneuver your workers to get those resources so that you can power up your board to do the best stuff.
So, yeah, because with Villainous, you just there's no big board. It's just these single cards with the character's picture and then your rooms that you can move to. So I guess it does make it very unique in the sense that you just don't have that big player board. Like, is Revolution from Steve Jackson considered a...
It's like blind bidding is the core mechanic in that one.
Okay, so that's more of a blind bidding. Yeah, there's so much that I just... the different mechanics and the different names, and it's like when we pulled out Villainous and you gave us the cards and we chose our characters and I was Grievous for the first time, I was like, oh, this is interesting. There's no big board in the middle for us to work, in the same space. We are working in your own space, and when you started explaining it, I'm looking at it, I have to say my brain kind of exploded, and I was shrinking in my chair, I don't know if I can do this. I'll fake it. I'll see if I can do this mission.
And then you won. But we wound up playing this game 3 times.
Yeah, we did. So, I mean, I was charmed with it for some reason. I just thought it was kind of a unique mechanic having this and playing your character. And I played Grievous the first time around, and I was like, I liked his character and the Clone Wars movies that were done by, I wish I remember the name, the characters the creators of Samurai Jack. So, that Clone Wars that came out first before the animated series that came out. But, it was fun to, play him, and his mission was to get the 8 lightsabers and trying to figure it out. So the onboarding was a little difficult, but I would have to say I was charmed by the mechanic of we each had our own little board to work with. So,
do you think it took some of the pressure off of you playing with us because you had your own little space to work within, and I couldn't step on your board, and you didn't have to worry about jumping onto Burns' board to do something?
Maybe. Yeah, because if we have a big board, we're working in each other's places and space, where it's like, okay, I can try to figure out my own little space and figure out how each thing works. So I think it was overwhelming at first, but I was able to maybe just focus on this piece in front of me instead of I have to watch you all, but the way I learn board games, if it's new to me, is watching. I always have people go first because then I can sort of watch what they do, where they go, and try to figure out a strategy. So I always learn by watching, and you know, so that was blown out of the water with this game. So I was just like, so it was interesting, and so it took a while for me to wrap my head around what I needed to do and figure out. So, but I still was kind of charmed by it. I would like to try some of the other Villainous, like the Marvel or the Disney, to see if it's different from the Star Wars or, you know. But again, just don't want to sink the money into buying all of them. So
Yeah. The only real interactions between players in Villainous is when you take a fate action. You choose a player and you look at the top 2 cards of their fate deck. Then you choose one, and it generally places some kind of restriction on them. Like when Rey makes Kylo Ren feel all gooey inside and move towards the light side. Or when you capture Baby Yoda like a little green football and pass him back and forth between the hero and villain sides of your board. Phoenix, we don't tend to play a lot of games where we are in direct competition with each other. What did you think specifically of our 2-player game where we can only play fate cards against each other?
I guess before, when you were helping me get into more board games, you know, I always avoided the competition with each other because I never felt strong enough. But we have been playing more, and Memoir has helped also to be more competitive with you and stuff. So
the Memoir was awesome.
Yeah. So
Burns, you should play Memoir. It's great.
So
I'll take your word for it.
I'm getting more comfortable with the direct competition. So that is starting to not be as much of a factor anymore. But the fate action, I think, has its negatives. It has its positives. And you know, with Grievous, he has to defeat so many heroes, but those heroes only come out when someone draws fate cards on my board. And if no one fates me, I can't really, you know, reach my goal of 8 lightsabers. So,
and you ran into a problem in that first game because first Burns and I weren't playing a lot of fate cards on you because I think we were trying to be nice.
Yeah. That's okay.
And then we realized that like that was your core mechanic for winning. It's like, oh, well, we just won't do that then. It started being nice and then it evolved into something else.
Yeah, I guess like I was begging you, please fate me, come on. But, you know, with Grievous, it's interesting because he's supposed to defeat so many heroes, and those heroes will only come out when someone fates me. And not having been able to spend a lot of time with my deck of cards before we played it, I should look at them again before doing the podcast, but I don't think there's really any cards in there for me to bring the heroes out myself so I could defeat them to win the game. So I think Grievous is interesting because you rely on your opponents to fate you, but if they know that's the way for me to win, they're not going to fate me as much. And then the other thing I thought was interesting with Grievous is that I had the vehicle ship that came out on my fate deck where you guys got to see my hand the whole time.
Oh, yes.
And so my cards just laid out and you guys got to see what was there.
And like you had a card where if we play a fate card, you get to pull Mace Windu out of the graveyard and just kill him again.
Yep. So
that really made us not want to put fate out there ever again.
Yeah. So, but when I played Ventress, I think it's her name. I'm sorry if I'm butchering it, but she has to complete 3 missions. And so she has her regular deck, her mission deck, and her fate deck. And, you know, again, it's a big learning curve with this game and not understanding what the cards mean and trying to figure it all out. I thought when we first started playing I had to wait till someone fated me so I could complete my missions. But as we read the rules a little bit more, she at least has cards that allows me to bring the heroes out so that I can try to defeat the mission so I can win the game. So I think the fate deck is interesting, but it can be a hindrance or it can be a helpful tool to get your goal. So it depends on your cards and your deck.
There are some games that I enjoy that have like the similar solo vibe where like you're doing your own thing with a group of players. Like Terraforming Mars jumps to mind, and we talked about Scythe. For the most part, the fate deck kind of left me wanting. Burns, if you had to choose to play one game, 2-player, Memoir 44 or Villainous?
Can I choose the lava? I really don't think playing Villainous 2 players would be a lot of fun, just because it's either you're playing as somebody that doesn't want to have fate cards thrown against you, and then you're going to get fated like every other turn, or you're playing as somebody that wants fate cards, and then that's an action that's never going to happen throughout the game. And it just feels like in a 2-player game, it's just that much harder than to do any of your shtick, because of that. Just there's nobody else to soak up some of those things.
And when Phoenix and I played 2-player, I was Vader, and I faded her every turn, and I just steamrolled you, which was a lot of fun for me.
Well, I mean, I tried Kylo Ren because Joey played it the first time we played the game, and I was like, I'm going to try Kylo, because Grievous was fun, and I was able to pull the win out. But, yeah, with Kylo, it's just, he seems to be the hardest of all the villains that are in this board game to win, because of Rey and because of Leia. It's just like, I don't know if they didn't realize they made it so hard, but you also have to cycle through your cards till you get Snoke out, and he can really help you win. But again, it's the luck of the cards, the luck of the drawing of your hand. So
I was looking around on Board Game Geek a little bit, and they were talking about looking at different people giving their sort of ratings of the easier characters to harder characters, and it sort of seemed like the consensus was Vader and Grievous were like the 2 easiest characters. And then Gideon was kind of in the middle, and then Ventress, because of the mission cards and just there's like a lot that you have to try to do with those, was kind of on the more difficult side. And then most people sort of fell down that Kylo Ren was the most difficult.
They did, okay.
Just because, what you're trying to do. So, like, what happened when I was playing as Kylo Ren, his whole thing is you have this sideboard where you have these 6 chits that you're trying to move from neutral to the dark side. When Rey comes out, everything moves towards the light side. That happened on my second turn, or before my second turn of the game. And so I had moved one thing, I think, to the dark side, or maybe I hadn't even moved any. Yeah, I moved one thing to the dark side, and I had a bunch in the middle. So Rey came out, and so I had 5 in the light side, 1 in the middle, which means it'd basically be I'd have to try to move things like 11 times until I got until I would get Snoke out that can move things just directly to the dark side. And so, and I don't think when we played, I didn't get Snoke till like the very end, till like you already had 6 lightsabers, I think.
Yeah.
So I was just like, oh, well, this is what I needed throughout the whole thing. But that kind of comes down to it. I think, we've always talked about how like the first game you play of anything, you're just not going to know what you know until you get through it, right? And you're probably going to struggle in that first game. And it's just one of those things where I think after you play your first game of Villainous, if you're playing a new character after that, you really just need to look through all of your cards and fully understand what everything does with those synergies, along with, and they do a good job with the sort of player guide that they have, which is like a trifold thing that comes out that's double-sided, and it does a good job of walking you through the gist of the character, but you really need to like look at all the cards, and it's like, okay, these are the cards that I can draw that are going to be good for me, that I need to focus on, and then these are the fate cards that I want to avoid, or that I need to know that I need to have a plan to mitigate whenever they would come out.
Well, that's the thing, like, the little guide that you get with each character, it's like, you play Kylo Ren, I play Kylo Ren, and then I remember reading, like, oh, if he kills a hero, you can move a chip to the dark side. And even though I read it, with Villainous, there's so many things you're trying to keep track of, like what your cards do, how much of everything, that sometimes I forgot about that piece, but it took you playing Kylo Ren to be like, for all of us to click, like, oh, to kill a hero, get a chip to the dark side. So this has a steep learning curve where you need to either be able to have the brain that can sit down and look at all the cards and understand them.
Which is like the most fun way to play a game, right? Like, it's like you pull it out, everyone takes their deck, everyone spends an hour just studying every card, going full Casey mode to discover the synergies.
Or just realize it's going to take maybe 3 or 4 playthroughs for the whole group to do it, to finally click with everyone. People pick it up quicker than you will or something, but I think this is a game where you need to play it a few times to fully understand what everything means.
I think also seeing someone else play a character kind of helps to get an idea of them.
Yeah.
And it's like you saw them play certain cards, so you have an idea, okay, well, this does this. And so I think that does help a little bit. But having played like Kylo Ren the first time I played and then Darth Vader the second time, like I can definitely understand why Vader is considered easier, because it's just like,
because he is.
Everything's just kind of there, and you know what you need to do. It could get set back pretty badly at times. Thanks, Obi-Wan. But otherwise, like you still know what you need to do, and it didn't feel like that set me back as much as you would be set back with Kylo
and Heart and Strength.
Yeah.
Here's the deal with Villainous. I like figuring out the shtick for each character. Like, that was fun. Like, observing as we played the different characters. I saw you both get crushed with Kylo, and I'm like, is there a viable path? And, like, I studied when Phoenix played him, and then we went through the deck together afterwards to talk about, it's like, all right, here's a potentially viable strategy. And then we played, and I was one turn away from winning. I'm like, all right, great. That was fun. I'm glad that my strategy worked. Not quite enough to win, but... It was a viable path to victory. And then thinking about his deck afterwards, I don't see another viable path. Like, I don't see anything that I could do differently. So what's the replayability? I could play Kylo again and finally say, yes, I won. Yes. Doing the exact same thing that I did before, just a little luckier this time. So I thought it was a fun game, but I seriously questioned the replayability after you figure out the shtick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree too. I mean, the expansions probably just give you extra characters, but I mean, without the big player board in the middle for all of us to play together to maybe, change the way the play is, you're kind of stuck on the same track each time you play. So, I mean, I am charmed by how it's designed and how you play it, but it is a game that, the replayability is maybe not there as much unless you deeply love Star Wars and you just love the franchise much.
I do.
That, and plus it's a unique game. It's the villains, and a lot of your franchises focus on the heroes, and where this is just the villains. And that's kind of fun because we get to learn a little bit more of the villains. Villainous allowed us to see a little bit more of, Grievous's track, or remember what we've seen from the movies about him, and then Ventress. And so I think that one of the expansions includes the
I'm not saying his name.
the sister.
Oh.
What's her name?
The Night Sister?
I think she's from the video game. I don't know if that's the Pacific sister that they use, or if she's in the Clone Wars. But they bring in characters that if you haven't watched all the franchise, at least you kind of get to understand what their story is.
Tom's favorite Boba Fett.
Yeah,
that's the name. I'm not going to say it. His is probably really boring because you just have to fly directly into the Sarlacc. It's like turn one, I just jump in, I win.
That's definitely one of the cards, though, and I could only imagine how much that Fate card would suck.
Yeah, what's the other card? Jetpack. There's his entire villain deck and Fate deck.
Well, he'd have Slave 1 if they can still call it Slave 1 anymore.
Yeah.
Would he have Jabba the Hutt in his deck?
Probably.
So
Would Jabba be an ally? I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. It's hard to tell what they would do with that.
Well, Burns, I assume you're just like me and you grew up pretending to be Darth Vader. How well does Villainous capture that need to be the big bad in Star Wars?
I mean, as I mentioned before, I think the game represents each villain's journey really well. Their goal is kind of what the end of their arc was. Well, I guess I can't really speak for Ventress because, I've not really watched any of the Clone Wars stuff. But
Well, she pisses off Dooku and he eradicates the Night Sisters, so,
yeah, and we would have to watch the whole series to know, but
Well, I'm pretty sure I just summarized it.
let's pause and let's go out there and we'll watch 40 hours of cartoons and then we'll come back.
Well, actually, I guess we could ask my brother, who's watched every single Star Wars show and the Clone Wars, and to ask him what Ventress story is. He could probably tell us.
But yeah, so their goals align with what their villainous goals were in the characters' movies, show / appearances, and the Fate cards represent the typical heroes that countered them in that. So So,
Well, let me put it to you this way then. Do you enjoy the rehashing, or would you have rather seen how Darth Vader made Kylo Ren bend to his will? Like, it was all these heroes from different generations, which we commented while playing, which was interesting. So is the rehashing the right path, or would it have been fun to make up our own stories about how these characters would interact and who would come out as the dominant villain?
yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a different game for sure. It's like that, what is it called? Unmatched? Is that series of games where
we
it's
haven't played one. We have one or two.
We have at least two of them. We have
really?
Spider-Man and we have Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We just haven't played them yet, so...
Because, I mean, that sounds like it's something like that, then, where it would be interesting. I mean, I would assume they've licensed how many properties at this point.
Yes.
You think Star Wars is going to happen sometime, so maybe you will get that power fantasy of,
That's
you know, completely covered in black versus high-waisted black pants. But, yeah, I don't know. I think it would maybe have more replayability, but it wouldn't work with the game they designed. I don't know how you would make this, directly competitive with how they set it up.
So a recent reskin Scythe as a Star Wars villain game.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you take the Clone Wars board and then they're fighting over, like, controlling different parts of the galaxy or something like that. I don't know. But it just doesn't work with, you have, 5 villains that are from across 4 different eras of Star Wars, right? Because, I guess Vader and Ventress were around partially at the same time, as well as, Grievous was done before that. Oh, Vader was Anakin, I guess, then, and then Gideon was after them, and then Kylo Ren was well after all of them.
So suffice it to say, it's a great idea.
We'll figure it out.
We'll have to work it out before either Tom Brady or Giselle does. Phoenix, you were charmed by this game. How well does the whole thing come together? Like, when are we going to get Villainous back to the table?
I'm not sure. I was charmed with the gameplay because you each have your own cards, your own thing that you need to work on. I get that it can maybe standoffish to people that like to play on one big single thing and either go against each other or be cooperative, but I am intrigued with this franchise or this line of board games. I would like to try the Disney or the Marvel, but it's just like, again, I don't see a lot of replayability. I'm not sure if we'll bring Star Wars back out to the table because we've played a lot of them. Maybe we will because Ventress, it would be interesting to see if I can win the missions, have you play Grievous, what you think, or if you wanted to do Gideon again to see if you can do it better than, second time around. But, it's just, again, I'm not sure if I'm willing to spend the money to have all the expansions, even though I'm charmed. I would love to play Cruella de Vil, with Disney, because I love 101 Dalmatians, or, the different villains they have out there for that line of board games. I don't know what you call it, a franchise or whatever. But, yeah, it'd be great if someone could rent out the game and try it. But, yeah. As Villainous, I guess I'll have to say this. A lot of people probably don't see a lot of replayability to it, and I don't see it as much. And it is a game that I see frequently on Facebook Marketplace being sold. Yeah. People do sell their copies quite frequently. So I think it is a game that
people just hate in general?
No, they love it and play it, and then they're done and ready to move on. They just don't want to sit on their shelf. But...
Yeah, I enjoyed playing the game. They're just, like we've talked about a lot before, games like this are weird when there's no shared gameplay area, and you're really just playing your own game, being able to meddle a little bit with the other people's stuff across space and time somehow, but not, I don't know. I think it was a fun experience. I'm glad I played one of the Villainous games. But yeah, like you guys said, I just don't know how much replayability there is aside from trying all the characters.
Yeah.
And then, you could try to make, like you said, you could try to make them win, get back that one turn that would have gotten you the victory, and then that's that. I don't know if it's worth the hour and a half to go through that phase again,
I guess a question to you, babe, is do you think we'd want the expansions for this to try to see what the expansions are like for the Star Wars Villainous, or do you think this is a...
Let's clarify real quick. Do I want the expansions, or do we want the expansions?
Do you want
No.
Yeah.
This was a fun thing. I enjoyed playing it, and I'm glad that I had the experience. But like, I'm pretty much done with Villainous now. Like, if we got our hands on one of the other ones, it'd be fun to be like Ursula or whatever.
Well, it would be interesting because you said that like the properties. That's the word I'm looking for. Properties. Supposedly, you could take Venom. And put it.
That is my level of interest. If I could take Venom and put him up against like the Disney princess villains, that would be awesome.
So, as far as I saw with the Star Wars one, it's not there's no interoperability between.
Then hard pass. I'm done with Villainous.
Because the vehicles are unique to the Star Wars one.
Oh, okay.
And so, yeah, I don't know if there's interoperability between the Marvel and Disney ones.
Okay.
But there isn't with the Star Wars one, at least, I don't think. Okay. Unless you could find a way to house rule it somehow. Which some people might have done already, too.
True,
I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah, well, goodbye forever to Star Wars Villainous.
Another copy's hitting the Facebook Marketplace soon.
I'll even sign it.
Or it's a gift for next year's Patreon party.
Yeah. Why didn't we have this conversation yesterday in the morning?
Just shrink wrap it quick.
Next up, we're going to do Tom Awesome's Top 5.
It's time now for... Tom Awesome's Top 5 Countdown.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
For our top 5 today, I'm going to rank the top 5 space-based board games. Space-based games. Let's maybe leave board on the sideline for here. So the criteria is pretty simple. Anything that's not on Earth. At number 5, the Star Wars deck building game. I love this. I love deck building. It's got great art. It's a very fun game.
Earlier you said it's the best, but apparently it's the 5th best.
Well, it's the best that we're talking about on Star Wars board games of the show.
Oh, well, don't wait. Just steal your thunder for the end of the podcast. Jeez.
Yeah, well, shoot. I talked myself into a trap right there. So number 5, the Star Wars deck building game. We've already broken it down. Number 4, I'm curious if this surprises Burns at all, but the Firefly Adventures game.
I mean, I only played it the once, and it's been years.
Yeah, I was surprised.
It's a tactical mission-based game. Like, you play as characters from the Firefly crew, and we love Firefly.
Yep.
It's very tactically based, which I love. You have a mission briefing. There's, like, guards wandering around the board that you have to avoid, and it's kind of stealth-based. It's not very combat-based, which I know turns some people off.
Time-based, too.
It's time-based,
That's
which is a really unique mechanic. So there's a lot of things that I think make Firefly Adventures unique, and that's why I have it so high up on my list.
I mean, it is interesting, and it would be fun to play this again because we got one of the expansions that we haven't played yet, but it is, moving the pieces, the stealth, and trying to get out, and I really enjoyed the game the times that we have played it, so
like, it's a heist board game, right?
Yes,
and like
it
it's
is.
the only heist, I think, board game that we have or that we've played.
I think so, yeah.
Nuns on the Run.
Yeah.
That doesn't count.
I'm not going to count it. On your list, you can count what you want.
So it's not space-based. It's faith-based.
True. Yeah. So in the top 5 space-based board games, I have number 5, the Star Wars deck building game. Number 4, Firefly Adventures. Number 3, a game we've talked about many, many times in this podcast, Battlestar Galactica. And, like, it's not my favorite game in the world, and it depends on the group of people that I'm playing with, but I think there is just a ton to love about Battlestar Galactica. It's based on the TV series. You play as one of a number of different characters. There's a hidden traitor amongst your groups. By the end of the game, there will be 2 traitors, either hidden or outright, and there's just a lot of like social deduction that goes into this otherwise tactical game. So like, you're trying to manage the Cylons and all their ships and their boarding parties, and you're trying to fend them off. You're trying to protect your resources. You're trying to figure out who the traitor is, and it's really a tremendous game that's just been kind of ruined because my friends are all buttheads.
Well, it's just because you're always a Cylon, Tom. You can't help it.
It is amazing how boom or bust my luck is. I was like, I'm a Cylon a disproportionate amount of times in that game. Just looking at like our fantasy football lottery, like I'm either first or last almost every year. Like there's very little middle ground for me.
Well, it's like Ricky Bobby said, if you ain't first, you are last. So
Yeah,
you
pretty
might as well
much.
just exemplify that.
Yeah, I haven't seen that movie.
Yep. I don't know what to do with my hands. You should see that movie. I think you would enjoy it,
Yeah,
Tom.
I do own it. I've owned it for like 15 years.
Then you should crack that open one
Yeah,
of these nights.
yeah, well-
you need a nice little laugh.
Yeah,
and a
Phoenix
little
Runs
bit of
are
NASCAR.
entertainment.
Well, Battlestar Galactica game was well done. I know it's been discontinued, but it is. I've seen the miniseries and most of the series, and it does capture the essence of the show that was built off of. I think the game itself was actually originally done as Dark Moon, which you can get that copy, and they took that and used the Battlestar Galactica skin to create
And I
the
think
game.
Battlestar is much more fun than Dark Moon. 'Cause
Yeah.
we have both.
We have both, yeah. But it is a great game. I haven't played a lot of the expansions to know the full extent that the game can have, but it has that unique mechanic of the hidden trader and everything.
You played Battlestar? Did I play Battlestar with you? I don't remember
You
playing
had
Battlestar.
me. We were dating, and you had me sit down and play with your board gaming group one weekend, and I was pretty
Yeah.
timid.
It's funny, knowing you like I do now. It's like, oh, that was a bold move.
But I survived. I did okay.
Thanks for sticking with me, honey.
Yeah. But playing the game, I can see it's enjoyable. I would like to play it again. I mean, maybe it's a show topic we can tackle at sometime in the future. If someone owns all the expansions, it would be good to deep dive into the game and use all the expansions.
Adam has them.
Yeah, and he's got a sweet neoprene mat.
Okay, so maybe.
So in my top 5 space-based board games, it's number 5, Star Wars Deck Building Game. Number 4, Firefly Adventures. Number 3, Battlestar Galactica. Number 2, Star Wars Imperial Assault. Imperial Assault is another mission-based game. Like, you take a squad of Jedis. It's also asynchronous. There's a team of Jedis, and there's one person that's the dungeon master for the game. I forget what the specific term is within Imperial Assault. But
Yeah.
like, there's one person that runs the game and is the bad guys, and everyone else plays as the Jedis, and you're trying to...
Wow. The like rebels. You're not all Jedis. Unless one of them has you all being Jedi.
Yeah, I don't remember. It's been a long time, but...
Yeah.
It's a game that I've always loved. The couple of times that I've played it have just been brutally executed. So like this would be at almost the top of my wish list for games to play, with like a core group that just wanted to power through everything. And we own a fair amount of Imperial Assault. Like, I've just never found that group that was willing to learn the rules together and not rely on me to like run the game, run the offense, the defense, tell everyone what all their stuff is.
That's the trickiest thing about Imperial Assault, is that you have to have that one person that's like the bad guy.
And like, some people would thrive in that, and like,
Yeah.
I would like to do that, but I desperately want to play the hero side of the game.
Yeah.
So like, I don't want my only experience to be like the bad guy running the game.
I mean, I would be fine with being the bad guy running it. The tricky thing with being the bad guy is that, you want to do well, but it's not like you want to make it so that everybody hates it and never wants to play it again. So it's like this weird thing where, you want to be strategic and you kind of know what's coming, so you want to set things up or whatever. But you also don't want it to be unfair for them.
So it's basically just being a dungeon master.
It is. Though Dungeon Master, you have less of a want, I think, to actually necessarily succeed. I don't know. It's a little different, but it's similar, I would say, yeah. Imperial Assault's a fun game, though. It's a really well done system. It's, they kind of took a lot of like what they developed with Descent, I think, but then made it sort of this, Star Wars based system. So yeah, I don't know. It's a neat game. It's probably higher on your list than I would have it on my list, but...
Well, is that very similar to what they did with the Turtles game, too? The board game? Because one person plays the bad guys while the others play the
Pretty similar, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean...
That's always gone really well when you've played it, right?
Yes.
No comment. No comment, Casey.
I mean, this again, if we decide to do another theme like Star Wars again, because there's so many Star Wars games out there to touch on that. I mean, Imperial
there's so
Assault-
many Star Wars games that we own that we
Yes.
haven't played yet.
Yep.
So, I mean, it'd be something to think about to try to deep dive into Imperial Assault and really try to utilize all. I don't know if they still make all the expansions or if they're done making that game or.
Knowing Fantasy Flight, they're probably out of print, but
Okay.
there was a lot of copies, so there's probably still a lot of it out there that you could buy.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it was a well-regarded game when it came out, and the expansions were coming out, and I know I tried to for Christmas and birthday, but yeah, I would love to be able to find a space for you to play that with people.
Yeah, me too. So my top 5 list. Number 5, Star Wars deck building game. Number 4, Firefly Adventures. Number 3, Battlestar Galactica. Number 2, Imperial Assault. For honorable mentions, Nemesis. We talked about that on the show. We did that as a main show topic. Nemesis is a great game. It's a lot of fun. I'm not super alien based, and I have some minor quibbles with the game, but like it's a great space based thing. Clank in Space. Clank is another deck builder. I've owned the base game or the original Clank for years now, since I turned 40 and haven't played it. There's a space version. We should get that to the table at some point.
Should.
Alien, Fate of the Nostromo. That's another Ravensburger game from Target. I think it's designed by Prospero Hall. It's a cooperative game in the alien space. It's really simple, easy to pick up, and just fun. And it's like the most user-friendly aliens-based game that I'm willing to bet exists. I also had X-Wing on here, Burnsy's favorite game ever.
Was at one point.
Twilight Imperium or Inscription. I've had the second edition of Twilight Imperium forever, and I've just cracked the rulebook open once or twice. I'd love to experience that franchise. It's just such a time commitment. And then Star Wars Force and Destiny, which is a tabletop role-playing game. But Phoenix, it was your first role-playing experience. We played one session with you and Casey and Adam, and it was a really good time.
Yeah, no, it was a great, they built a great system with that package for people who haven't done a lot of role-playing before, and I think it's well done, and it's very fun, and you get to experience the characters and role-playing together. I don't know if D&D does a similar thing that Star Wars has done, where you have this sort of beginner package.
Oh, yeah.
So I guess, but we did Star Wars since I'm familiar with Star Wars and stuff, so.
Yeah, the Star Wars RPG system is really, it's an interesting setup. I do like the way that the dice work, where it's like you can have like a critical success, but there's still a negative that kind of comes with it. It's a little tricky because it's like, you know, it's FFG's favorite thing to do is make custom dice specific to the game that have a bunch of symbols on it. So you really got to learn how to, you know, put the symbology together in your head to make sense of it. But it is a fun system. Game I have on here that I was surprised you didn't mention was The Captain is Dead.
I'm surprised that you brought it up. I'm glad that you brought it up.
Yeah.
What makes that game stand out so much to you? It's a cooperative game where, like, imagine yourself in Star Trek and, like, Picard got murdered and, like, everyone else is trying to pick up the pieces.
Yeah, and everything's, like, going poorly and usually continues to go poorly. I don't know. We played it the one time and I had a lot of fun with it. And I would put it above a few of the things that made it on this list. So yeah, that's why I thought it should have been on there.
I mean, yeah, about the game, I thought it was an interesting concept, and I've been trying to look for the other games. I don't know if they still print them or not, but there's Captain Lockdown one and stuff. I love the mechanic of it because it's one of those games that was designed that you have to beat the game, and those games are interesting because they've had to make it difficult for you to be able to win this game, and every little thing could go wrong in the game, and I really enjoyed it the few times that I played it with you and stuff, and I think it's a great franchise. I don't know if it's still being printed, but if anyone can find a copy of The Captain is Dead, it's a fun one to do with a cooperative group, so.
It's really fun, but it's not heavy enough for my personal taste, Burns.
I mean, sure, the Star Wars deck building game's not heavy.
Yeah, but it's awesome. I'd take Star Wars deck building 1,000 times over Captain is Dead.
Yeah, I mean, I would maybe put Star Wars deck building game over The Captain is Dead too, but yeah.
No, it's a fun game. I'm glad you brought it up. Cosmic Encounter escaped me when I was first putting together the list. I played a boatload of games of Cosmic Encounter and generally enjoy it. Shared victories aside. So recapping the list, number 5, the Star Wars deck building game. Number 4, Firefly Adventures. Number 3, Battlestar Galactica. Number 2, Imperial Assault. And number 1, my favorite space-based game, Terraforming Mars. We talked about it on the Mars show, which I just re-listened to, and that game is just a gem, and I can't wait to share it with you, Phoenix.
Yes, and we actually bought a copy of the DICE one, which would be interesting to try to see what you think of the regular Terraforming Mars versus the Terraforming Mars DICE game. So
And I do love dice games.
You do love DICE games.
So that is our top 5 space-based board games. What did we get wrong? Tweet your thoughts or send your thoughts somewhere on social media to @TomSidlogic OiO.
I just need to call you a coward for a second, Tom.
Oh? By all means.
Yesterday at the Patreon party, we were talking about what can we do for a top 5. And, you mentioned, well, we could do top 5 Star Wars villains. That would kind of make sense with Villainous and everything like that. And we got into a little bit of a discussion about who was the top villain, and we're not going to get into it now because we have other things to talk about on the podcast. But yeah, I may or may not have, before you sent out the show notes this morning, I may or may not have been formulating my entire argument for how Vader is not the number 1 villain in the Star Wars universe. But maybe unfiltered, or maybe some other point down the line we can have that discussion. But I just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, Burns, I am sorry that you put all the mental power into it and that I pivoted at the last minute. Like, for me, the list is 1 for the top 5 villains, and then everyone else is not that interesting. It's like, okay, well, Grievous 2, Vader 1, the end.
Grievous 2, Vader. Okay, we're going to have this discussion at some point. Mark my words. And, I'm going to show you the error of your ways. And you haven't even mentioned the number 1 villain in Star Wars.
I feel like, sorry to go down this rabbit hole, that the prequels did a disservice to Darth Vader. Because the original classic Star Wars has him as this man you don't talk about. He's this ultimate villain. I know you have Palpatine, who's powerful, but I think the prequels did a disservice to Anakin not growing. I was disappointed. They did not grow him enough to create this evil man that they should have created in the classics. Because I didn't think he was evil enough. But watching some of the footage from the video game, Jedi Fallen Order.
Spoiler alert.
Oh, yeah. But anyways, there is...
It's already just like the last 10 seconds of the game. Sorry, Bruce.
Feel like, that the game is showing more of his power. And actually, Obi-Wan Kenobi, we saw his power that he had, or is supposed to have, that they never showed in the prequels. So I think Darth Vader was never developed in the way that he should have, that he was this scary boogeyman in the classics, but they never developed it to what he should have been. So
the scary boogeyman that at the end does the right thing and
he does do the right thing, yeah,
changes himself and becomes like the hero at the end that saves the universe.
Well,
so the most villainous person in the Star Wars universe is the guy that saves the Star Wars universe. That makes so much sense.
Well,
this is exactly who it should be.
No, I guess the problem is I always had was that Anakin was supposed to be this ultimate power, and they never showed it. To the point that I felt like and his turn never made sense. Oh, he's good, and all of a sudden he kills all these kids. It's like, there was not enough of the turn for me that needs to be there for his power. So, but
it would have maybe turned out better if Obi-Wan didn't have the high ground, but yes.
There's a great meme out there for parents. I don't know. I wish I could give parents who ever have kids to Google this great video, but it's
important background. Dealing with toddlers at night is a pain in the butt.
Yes, bedtime, toddlers, it's difficult. And just any situation with toddlers, it's like, but someone took that clip of the high, not the high ground, but...
You turned her against me!
And Obi-Wan says, you did that yourself. And it's the toddler saying, you turned her against me, and Obi is the father saying, you did that yourself. And the mom's walking away, just like... So, but, sorry to go on a tangent, but yeah.
That's all right.
So... It's a great video if anyone catches it somewhere on social.
Yeah, we watch it about 1,000 times. For our final segment, we're going to discuss Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Designed by Alexander Ortloff Tang. He has 11 design credits, including Love Letter.
Really?
Not the original Love Letter. The original Love Letter came out in about 2012. The one he's credited with came out in 2019, and it's some form of remake / expansion / still called Love Letter, no subtitle. It adds like new characters to it. He also did Unfathomable from the Abyss.
That's actually, I think, Battlestar Galactica. But
after they lost the license?
They lost the license. This is what the game is.
Interesting.
Now. Yeah.
In World of Warcraft, Wrath of the Lich King.
Oh, okay.
This game was published by Z-Man Games. It has a Board Game Geek rating of 7.6. In Star Wars: The Clone Wars, you traverse a galaxy where iconic Jedi heroes utilize the familiar gameplay mechanisms of the Pandemic series in Star Wars. Planets under siege populate the game board as players take on the role of legendary Jedi traveling from battle to battle, teaming up and fighting off the Separatist threat. Battle droids attack on sight, and a planet invaded by too many will fall under a blockade, hindering Jedi from liberating it from the enemy or accomplishing missions. Players must work together to confront the onslaught of droids by moving into their spaces, engaging them in combat, utilizing dice and squad cards to deal damage and push back the threat. In between battles, players move from planet to planet, battling more droids, crushing blockades, completing missions to turn the tide of the war, and facing off against iconic villains. Phoenix, I want to start with you. You love Pandemic. How well did the Clone Wars capture the vibe from the original franchise?
For me, it captured it really well. I know they've come up with different skins. Cthulhu, which I'd enjoy. It's a fun game, but it's not one of my top ones with the skin. I would like to try World of Warcraft to see what that's like, but because I love Star Wars and they took the system that I love with Pandemic and turned it into a Star Wars game, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I thought they captured it well. Especially the cards, when you are adding droids to planets and you flip a card and then I can't remember what the word is, but it's not like infection, like with
it's the invasion deck.
Invasion deck. So then you have to reshuffle again and then draw, and so it had that feel of the droids going on planets and your repeat of planets coming out, and you're having to think, strategically, what do we need to do differently? So I think they did a really good job of that. So
yeah, it really speaks to how well crafted the original Pandemic is, and how good those base core mechanics are. In that it can sort of fuel this game and still be very similar to what that is, but then with a couple of added things, feel still unique and interesting and different in its own right, and still also be a representation of Star Wars in a pretty good approximation. And it's not just a lot of, like, especially when we were kids, licensed games when they would get released. I mean, we played one recently, I guess, with the Lord of the Rings. But then also, it's like the other thing that came to mind is like the Monopoly, like all the versions of Monopoly that are everything else, and it's basically the same board with just, instead of Boardwalk, it's Coruscant or whatever, and you're just like, all right, yeah, this is Star Wars to me. I rolled doubles. I get to ride on the Star Destroyer now. It's just so weird. But this is like, it actually makes it an interesting game. It still feels like Pandemic, but it also has its own quirks that are really fun and interesting.
Yep.
Hey, Feeny, you want to share what it was like playing Monopoly with my family for the first time?
I won't play again.
You guys play very cutthroat Monopoly?
They have a rule which they did not tell me.
So we just thought it was the rules. We thought everyone knew.
So when I land on, or someone lands on my space that I own and you get rent from someone, I guess they created a rule where you can yell.
You just say rent. You have to say rent to collect the rent.
So all of a sudden Tyler and I don't know if Jake start yelling rent. I'm like, wait, but they get the money because they yelled it first.
No, whoever owns the property gets the money. I think your issue.
I had to give Tyler the money because he yelled it first because I didn't yell rent in time, so he got the money. Is how they played with me that day.
It's not how I recall it. I recall the yelling and how much that put you off.
No, actually, I don't know. Maybe it's Jake's rule with Tyler. I don't know, but I was like, I have to yell rent before Tyler does, because if I don't yell it before he does, then he gets the money. It was how we were playing it that day, so I was just like, so. As
an independent third party in this conversation, I can agree with Phoenix that is not part of the core game mechanics, that if somebody lands on a property that you have to yell rent at them.
I just thought that was the way you played Monopoly. Going back to my original question, like, I agree. It felt very similar to Pandemic, and that was great. The thing that I took issue with was only being able to travel planet to planet. Because, like, if you have to get across the board, in Pandemic, you can discard, like, a city from across the map, and you can fly directly there. There's no similar thing here, and I really struggled with just the traversal of planets.
Use your ships.
Oh, good. Then you can go too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Double your movement.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's still 15 planets to get across.
If you could just teleport anywhere, then there's no strategy to the game.
Yeah. Oh, true. I just missed those city cards. One key way this game stands out from Pandemic is the addition of a squad deck. You start with a couple of these squad cards, and you can use one of your 4 actions on your turn to draw another one. There are 5 different types of squad cards, and they essentially get added to dice rolls, and they help you achieve mission checks, or to battle enemies, or to perform one-time actions. When 2 Jedi are on the same planet, they can share their squad cards. Burns, how does the squad system compare with working together in, say, the base version of Pandemic?
So I guess the tricky thing with this, and I don't know, it's been a while since I've played Pandemic, so I'm not 1,000% sure, because can you just...
It's basically you can trade cards if you're standing in a city, you can trade that city to another player.
So it's a little bit similar to that, where you can, well, no, it's different, right? So yeah, the tricky thing with this mechanic is that with the way that the board ends up, and like you were saying, traversal, you have to go kind of space to space to space. There weren't a lot of times where we were that close or on the same planet until you got to like either doing like one of the missions or like the end game, right? And so I think that was the tricky thing, is that you couldn't really, I guess, find a lot of opportunities to be able to do that and utilize that. I guess you did it more often when you were actually trying to pass those checks and needed the help more often than not. And I think with strategy and trying to maneuver yourselves the correct way, and if you sort of say, okay, in a couple of turns we should try to go for this one, and you can start working your way across the galaxy to do it. I think you can maneuver yourselves that way as best as possible, and as quick as possible, and using some of the special abilities, like we'll talk about a little bit later, can help you traverse through that area also. I do think, though, with like the helping with cards, there's instances that you get caught into where you feel like you can't do anything on your turn because somebody else is going to make a check that's more equipped for the check, but they need like a couple of your cards. So it's like, okay, well, I need to be in this one spot, so I can't really move super far away. And I can't use these cards for like another check, so I can't go attack something with those. So it kind of leads to at times where you feel like you just gotta kind of stand somewhere and wait for when somebody else needs to use your stuff. And then it's like, okay, we succeeded.
It's like super fun, right? Like just,
yeah.
Hey, I'm a coat rack. That's the power fantasy, right?
So that was the only part of it. And I think it was really problematic. We'll talk about it later with Ventress. And it was a little bit less so a lot of the other times of the game, but that was the spot where it broke down a little bit, I would say.
Fina, did you like the squad deck?
I think it's kind of hard to say apples to apples, because with Pandemic, you can stand in a city, but you can only take 1 cube off, depending on what your character can do. But you also have to collect so many of the city cards to be able to wipe, the clear stuff and stuff. So I think they did a great job with the squad cards, because they can't do the exact same thing with the disease. Oh, you need so many of a city card to cure a disease or clear a city. So you have the squad deck, which to me, I think it worked well, because, you had to be strategic, cycle through cards and use your cards specifically, because you're not kind of like, oh, I gotta get to Los Angeles and, figure out all these yellow cards and have them perfectly. So I think they did a good job with the squad cards. They gave us enough of the colors and the different uniqueness that we can use the abilities of certain cards, because there's one card that would let us travel someplace that we needed to go to. And also, they need to make it challenging because you have these different villains, because you play one round as with Ventress, and so that's a unique game that you're playing against Ventress. And then you decide, okay, the next time we play it, are we going to play against Count Dooku, or is it Grievous maybe on one of them or something?
And Maul.
And Maul. So when you decide to do a different villain, it's a whole different strategy. So the squad cards are able to transverse all these different villains. So you're able to play them with each mission without being hindered with, the different cities and stuff. And they also have to make it challenging, because what's the point of making it easy for you? Because, we beat it in the one turn. We're not gonna... Why bring this game out again if it wasn't a challenge for us? So they have to balance the challenging aspect, but also keeping someone interested enough to try to see if they can beat the game. So,
and the majority of the cards help with doing extra damage when you're attacking things.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they help prevent damage. So, like the yellow cards prevent damage coming back at you, or the ships help you move. So they all have like their own utility, and then based upon the missions that you have, you're going to want more of certain colors of cards. And that's the one thing that gets tricky.
Yeah, I was going to say the variability of the missions can really change how effective your squad cards are.
Yeah.
So if you know what you need for the finale and you're all geared up for the finale, but you have to clear 1 or 2 missions before you get there, it's like, do you really want to dump your current build to achieve these missions to get to the finale versus taking those actions to try to get your red cards or blue cards or purple cards, whatever you're going to need for the finale? That was where I struggled with the squad cards specifically.
Well, I feel like it gives you that challenge because, if it's easy, are you going to want to bring it back to the table?
I want to win.
Yes. So those that want to win but can't beat the game, I feel like it allows you to come back to play it again to see if you can do it better. Or because of the card luck, it's always going to be different. So it's a nice game for me. It's just because it has the variability. You're playing against the board. I don't have to... with the deck building, it's nice because we're going against each other and we can play it over and over again. But I do like games where you can pull it out and say, okay, let's see if we can actually beat it this time together,
And I do think one of the games we had where, I don't know that we necessarily planned on doing it, but it just kind of worked out that, like, I kind of had more of like a different color than what you all had. And so then when that mission came up that we needed that color, it was like, oh, okay, I can go and do this then. And then you guys were on the other side of the map for the other mission because you guys could accomplish it together.
Yep.
And so I think you can kind of split tasks a little bit. I think with this, is there anything in the game that makes it more difficult for more players?
I think you could choose to do more missions. I think the base level is just only 2 missions where you can choose to do up to 5 maybe.
Yeah. So like with 4 players, you'd be able to spread out more of that opportunity too. And have someone focus on each color basically, and then have a couple extras of the other ones to help out with some of the other checks. But, once they get up to like 10 successes on 2 of the colors, it makes it difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah. Throughout the game, you play as one of 5 heroes with a special ability, trying to manage the droid population while also completing missions and forcing a final confrontation with the big bad. The game's difficulty is determined by the number of mission cards that you decide, and you decide that before you attempt the game. So, like, 2 is an easy game, 3 is more difficult, 4 is hard, 5 is extremely difficult. Burns, would you say that this is a satisfying difficulty scale?
I mean, it definitely ramps things up by adding an additional mission because it's just more time that it takes to get through that stuff.
And time is a valuable commodity because eventually the villains are going to push the invasion track all the way to the end. So, you're going to draw 4 cities every time, and that's just going to really deplete the droid population and make it more challenging to win.
Yeah, but I feel like it's one of those things where... So the first game we played... and we won, but we played some rules not quite correctly that were in our favor. And so then we played the second game, and I think with the second game, did we add in that extra mission?
Yeah, we added a mission, and we still won.
And we still won, and it felt like then once we played it the right way, it's like, oh, okay, we did really well with this. And then when we played against Dooku the last time,
we added another mission card, so then we were up to the hard scale.
Yeah, and we got pounded. In the end, we made it pretty far, but we did get pounded.
It didn't go great. I thought that this, as a difficulty scale, was a drawback of the game. Because if the game goes too long, you are just going to lose, because you're going to not be able to stay on top of the droid population. And I would rather that the difficulty was tied to the villains that you're facing. So, like, if you know that you're going to take on Maul, it's going to be harder than if you're fighting Ventress. If you're taking on Dooku, it's going to be harder than that.
I do think that's part of it also, even though it doesn't say it in the rulebook, because I think Ventress is very straightforward, and in that case is easier than Dooku, where you're fighting 3 villains at once, basically, for the entirety of the game until you get to the final, mission. So I do think to an extent, and maybe it's just because Asajj Ventress is like the kind of intro villain. I do wonder, we didn't play against Maul or Grievous as the villain, but I'm guessing that they all have their own individual differences that make it more difficult too. So I think that is part of the difficulty variability also. But
no, I'm pretty sure it's just the cards.
Well, was Ventress a lot easier to finish the final mission against than Dooku was?
Yes, but we did also play with one less mission card against her. So, the invasion track was a little further, and it's just...
Yeah.
But Phoenix, I think you have a strong point on this.
I do. I guess, because Ventress is the intro to learning how to play the game, and you're basically was sort of saying what I felt like. I was talking to Tom when we were doing the notes. I felt like we never gave this game enough time to really play it out, because we didn't really play the other villains that probably are the meat and bones of the game to really get a feel for this game, because we played the intro twice. And I feel like to really understand how complex a game could be or how difficult it could be, I felt like we needed to play more of the other villains to know what the meat and bones would have been like versus just the intro. So
are you saying that I'm inadequate as a husband? And
no. No, it's just unfortunately our timing with schedule, cramming everything in, trying to play the games, and just next time if we do a board game theme, maybe we'll try to do 2 months of trying to fit things in. But, summer's busy,
And this was a real tight turnaround. Yeah. We recorded Fallout right at the end of last month with a week later than usual. So, we ran into it. I felt pretty good about where we were with the prep work, because we did play 3 times with 3 different difficulties and 2 of the different villains, but I definitely see where you're coming from with not experiencing the full breadth of the villains.
Yeah. So I feel like there might be more to the game, but the replayability might not be there once you play everything, but it's a game that I don't mind keeping on the shelf versus Villainous, because it will be different every time we play it because of the invasion decks that, they change,
And there's a wide variety of missions. You play with between 2 to 5 mission cards, but there's a full deck of them.
Yeah.
And the missions are kind of neat. There's one where you have to go to Dathomir to deal with the Night Sisters, and, you have to go to Dathomir and take an action to investigate, and then the mission pops up somewhere else, and it could be literally anywhere else in the location deck.
Or right next door.
That
worked out pretty nicely.
Yeah, that was helpful, but I think the missions are very unique. I think the replayability in this game is probably higher than the other games that we've talked about today.
Yeah, I think it's there. I guess as far as what I've noticed on Facebook Marketplace, it is a game that pops up a lot that people are reselling. So I don't know if it's just not finding people to play it with you, or just...
Maybe everyone just hates fun.
Yeah. But I think because I love Pandemic, I love Star Wars, I think it's a game that I wouldn't mind keeping on our shelves to play, because I feel the replayability is there for us to pull out and try and see if we can defeat them.
Yeah, I agree. We played as every hero except Anakin. Phoenix, who stood out to you amongst the characters that you played?
I guess trying to remember who I played. I think I enjoyed Obi-Wan because you got to draw and look at 4 cards, I think, and you get to keep one, and then you put them at the bottom of the deck. So that allowed you to have maybe the extra piece to helping at a certain instance. But Ashoka, sorry if I butchered that, but she was the first character I played, and I didn't play her correctly as I should have. So it'll be fun to try to play her again in a more correct manner.
Yeah, she's essentially Legolas. She's a ranged combat expert.
Yeah, I just didn't realize it or didn't read the card correctly when I first played with her. So, but
and I don't know enough about the Clone Wars. Did she really like throw her lightsabers to the planet next door to kill things? 'Cause that's pretty impressive if she did.
It is, yeah. No, but I mean, each hero has a unique ability, which is like the original Pandemics. You choose a role to help cure the disease. So they did a great job taking heroes from Clone Wars and trying to give them their unique ability to help you. So
I also played as Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan was great, especially because I played in the first game we played together, and so it was just like I got to see a lot of the deck, so I kind of understood a lot of like the special cards that come up too. Yeah. So it was neat to sort of just see what all was out there. I also played as Mace Windu, and I think like if I played as Mace Windu again, I would probably try to utilize him in a little bit different way, but his ability is that he can draw up to 3... What are they? Droids? Battle droids? Is that what they're called?
I think they're B1 battle droids.
Yeah. So he can pull up to 3 of the droids to the planet that he's on from adjacent systems, and then attack, then as long as you do that, you still have an action to attack. But it allows you to... If you're going somewhere where a planet's about to get overrun, and there's a risk because it might be coming up in the invasion deck, then he's a good way to sort of help manipulate that in your control. And so I thought that was a really a neat thing for him to have been.
Yeah, I played as Cosmic Uber Yoda. His special ability is just to move other characters around, which is crucial. It's really important. Yeah. It's just silly that the most powerful Jedi of the galaxy is just like moving the troops around. Yeah.
I guess one mechanic with this game that's unique from the original is the dice, because you don't have that in the original game where you have to roll the dice to see if, how to use your cards. Because you roll it to see if you can kill everyone without getting wounded, or to make the check for the mission without getting wounded, and use your cards to fill in the rest. So I think that was a unique thing to add to this game. So
it adds a little bit more randomness so that you're not just like, oh, okay, I've got this.
Yeah.
Although oftentimes we stacked our squad decks to know that we got this. Like, we didn't leave a lot of variability to the dice.
Yeah, there was once or twice, I think, where it was like, okay, well, this is getting to be a problem over here, so I'm going to go to try to do something. And I think there was one time where I failed a check because I got a blank on the die. And I was just like, well, anything else I would have had it, but so much for that.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Burns. Nice try. I just wanted to note that all the abilities for the heroes added a useful tool to the arsenal. So, they were all great in their own way. And it was a lot of fun using their special abilities. We played 3 games against 2 of the villains, and each villain has a special ability in their own deck of activations. Burns, when compared to the pandemic experience where you're trying to control disease outbreaks in different regions, what did the villains bring to this experience to Star Wars The Clone Wars?
Yeah, so, I mean, it definitely added a different layer to it. And granted, a lot of that happens at the end of the game. With Ventress, as I was talking about before, she's always running towards whichever mission's closest to her. And so she's most likely going to get in the way. And you can't do the mission if the villain is on the spot. So
and that's a problem. But with her, she also cranks up your threat every turn that she's standing on the mission, which is a major problem.
Yeah, so I know the second time when we played against her, it was basically she popped up somewhere and someone would try to intercept her and kill her before she could get somewhere. And so that was interesting. But then when we played against Dooku, well, it's Dooku on the board, her on the board, and Grievous on the board. So then you have 3 of these villains that you're trying to destroy and knock out. Because she had 3 health in the first time, so it's basically 3 successes that you had to do to kill her. Each of those only had 2, except for, I think Dooku had more, if I remember correctly.
Maybe he had 3?
Something like that. I thought he maybe did. Maybe they all had 2. I can't remember. But still, having 3 of them out and around really, and especially once, because we ran into the problem with that game that all the missions kept happening kind of in the same kind of conglomeration of planets in the middle. And so then it just made like everything just piled up and piled up and piled up kind of right in the center of the galaxy, which was good to get around to, but it just got overwhelming. And we got invaded out basically by the end of that.
Yeah, all those Outer Rim planets. Bullcrap.
Yep. But it was definitely a different experience when we played against the other villain, and so it would be neat to play against Grievous as the villain, and then Darth Maul as the villain to sort of see how different the gameplay is with that. I don't know. It probably would add more wrinkles to it, I would think, than what we experienced.
Yeah, I agree. The villains bring a unique aspect to it. So, I mean, if you choose to fight Grievous, you'll have a different sort of, experience in ways because of what he brings to the board versus Count Dooku. So, I think it's a nice mechanic they added to the game by having these different villains for you to try to work against. So,
I really like that they all had their own unique activation deck. They had one thing that was similar. They all had one card that basically moved the invasion tracker up. But other than that, they had 5 things that were their own unique actions, which I think keeps things really fresh. It's shuffled every 6 cards, so you don't really know what order they're coming in. So maybe you can try to prepare, but you don't really know what's coming, and I think that's really neat.
I think also the miniatures for the villains, as well as just the battle droid miniatures and stuff, I think are really neat.
They did a good job with the Z-Man games. The miniatures look really nice, and the little droids themselves, it's like they didn't cut any corners with making them, and they made them all look different.
Yep.
Well, there's a set kneeling, there's
there's multiple poses, which the cheap way to do it would just be all the same. Yeah. They all look the same. They're all just the, same little battle droid. But no, there was at least 4 or 5 different poses mixed around with there. So it made it look really nice on the board when you have a bunch of them out there, though it was infuriating when there was a bunch of them out there.
Yes, it was.
Well, they clearly put more love and care into the franchise than Disney did with the prequel trilogy. LucasArts did with the prequel trilogy.
Well, I guess it's nice that they took the time to build nice little miniatures, because with the original Pandemic, it's little glass cubes, which they could have done with the droids. The color cubes would have been representation. So, for anything, they built a beautiful game with that in mind. So
yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Phoenix, the final showdown against the bosses, was that a fitting payoff for the game? Was it satisfying having this final thing that you had to do against each of the villains?
With what we've played, I can see people may find it a little bit lacking, but I feel like we haven't played enough of the different villains to really have a strong opinion right now.
Yeah, so. And Burns, I'll preempt you here. I didn't think that the Asajj one was all that interesting. You had to basically do a check of 10 twice, and it's by that point we had all our squad cards. We just tweak our decks a little bit and make sure the Jedis are standing in the right place.
Well, and that's exactly where we ran into the problem I mentioned earlier, where it's just I can't remember who it was, but one of the times when we were playing, it was one of you two had the better set of cards to make the check, and I had a few that could contribute. So I was just standing on the planet, and it's okay, well, I'll run over to this planet quick, I'll kill a battle droid or 2, and then jump back and just wait for you to use my cards because we need it to win. And so that got to be a little
super satisfying, right?
That got to be a little bit frustrating. With Dooku, did we just get to flipping him, and then that's
we set up the finale? I can't for the life of me recall what it was.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure we failed pretty quickly after that flipped because we were just getting overrun with battle droids everywhere.
Yeah, I think that's what happened once, that flip happened.
But I know there's some interesting things with, like, Darth Maul. He has this power that he builds up as the game goes on, and you have to try to find a way to, like, mitigate his power. And then Grievous... I just looked at the back of his card to see what his final mission was, and it's like a series of 4 or 5 different things that'll pop up that are each of them are a little bit easier to get through, but it feels like it's a little bit more frantic, and you're running all over the board to try to accomplish that. So yeah, it would be interesting to kind of see that and see if it changes our thoughts on the game as a whole down the line.
Yeah, so Asajj may be a little disappointing, but there's a lot of potential with those finales across the game. So Burnsy, this was the only cooperative game that we played for the show. How well did Clone Wars capture the vibe of Star Wars and the essence of Star Wars?
So it's difficult for me to tell because, you know, I haven't watched Clone Wars. You know, I've seen 2 episodes of Clone Wars. So, and none of the 2 things that I saw in that really was applicable to what we played. So yeah, since I don't have a lot of that outside of episode 1 through 3 to really relate to, it's hard for me to tell with that. Like, each of the clone troopers has a name on the cards. So if people were huge fans of the Clone Wars cartoon or the Bad Batch, I bet you a lot of those names kind of are those troopers that are throughout the series. But that being said, since you couldn't really connect on that level, you know, it still had Jedi that I recognized from the movies. So, you know, Mace Windu and Obi-Wan, of course, and Anakin, though none of us wanted to play as him, apparently. Which is just weird that we never actually played as him. But also, it was really cool, like, going to all the different planets and having them all represented on the board, even though whenever they would pop up, I could never find them to save my life for some reason. I just never could figure it out.
You were under a lot of pressure as, like, droid placer, dude.
Yes. But I would have felt after playing 3 times, like, at least, like, a couple of the planets I would have remembered, but you would say Sullust for, like, the 10th time, and I'd just be like, ah! It's like, it's right in front of you, Burns. So yeah, that did happen, but I don't know. Each of the Jedi felt powerful and were interesting to play as, and yeah, the die-added randomness. Not that really happens with the source material, but I threw it into the notes there for some reason.
Feeny, you love Star Wars. How well did Clone Wars capture Star Wars?
I think visually it captured it well. Like Burns says, the hero, each Jedi with their hero and their uniqueness made them the unique, powerful person that they are in Star Wars. The board, it was fun to have it laid out and have every planet out because, you know, when you watch something, they throw the name out here and the name here, but it's like, oh, this is like a cool map to look at. Like,
there's like 30 planets.
Yeah, this is a massive universe they've created. So I thought it was very fun to just see the planets with their names and stuff. But like what I've talked about before, the art design on the cards, the little miniatures that they've created, it captures the world of Star Wars. So
I'm not the biggest fan of the Clone Wars in general, but I thought this was just a great representation of them. From the characters to the board to the art of the cards, like, really captured the vibe very well.
The heart of the cards?
The heart of the cards. Phoenix, you love Pandemic, you love Star Wars. How well did Star Wars Clone Wars, how well did the whole package come together?
I think it came well together. I think they did a great job of taking the base mechanics of Pandemic and throwing it into the Star Wars universe. It'll be interesting to play the other villains and see what they're like and the difficulty with playing against them. I mean, Darth Maul sounds really interesting with his power mechanics, so I'm looking forward to trying to play more of it to just get a better feel for the game. So, but
yeah, it really came together extremely well. It represents the whole pandemic thing of creating this ever-increasing problem that you need to try to figure out how to solve it as a group. And I think it was enjoyable in that way. I mean, of course, there's some things that maybe could have been a little bit better, but I think if you played Pandemic and you like Star Wars, especially if you have a huge affinity for this, like, you can jump into it. Like, there's not a ton of learning curve other than just remembering how Pandemic works and then picking up the few extra things that they added into here. So yeah, I think it's just really easy to jump in and play, and was a lot of fun.
This game was a lot of fun. I think that it can be a really good onboarding game if you're playing a board game with like another couple. This is an easy enough way to bring someone in. If they have any familiarity with Star Wars, you can help them through the rest. I also think it's really interesting and fun that they took the base Pandemic mechanics and added a dice checking mechanic to Killjoy. It's like, awesome. That's like the one thing missing from Pandemic. And chucking dice and killing dudes. It's awesome.
Well, and you guys played the Pandemic Cthulhu game, right? So you would say that this is a better iteration of Pandemic than that?
We're split.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he enjoys Cthulhu a lot, and I can't remember if there's a dice with that one, but I enjoyed it, but I guess I'm not as enthralled with the base material to really enjoy the game as much as, like, I love Star Wars, and so I love the base material that they took for this. It would be interesting to play World of Warcraft to see what they did with.
Yeah, hopefully you can kill all the humans.
Well, the mechanics of
the Alliance must die, honey.
The mechanics, but I know you've played World of Warcraft, so it'll be interesting to see what your perspective is.
The World of Warcraft one, I don't think is with the Pandemic system. I think it's just a completely different.
Okay, because
just a board game based on that. I could be wrong though.
I thought it had Pandemic systems on the bottom, but I guess we'll see if we ever get our hands on a copy to see what it's like. So, but
there was a World of Warcraft Small World adaptation.
There's that too, I think. Maybe I'm getting them mixed up, but I could be mixing them up.
I could be wrong too. So.
Yeah, but we have Rising Tides, which we haven't tried yet, but which is another
Pandemic Rising Tides. It's set in like Finland,
Netherlands,
with
and
the
you have
canals. To control the fjords.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about water mitigation.
Water. So we played the base, we played all the expansions, so we enjoyed the full breadth that they've created with the systems, but I think he enjoys Cthulhu over...
Yeah, Cthulhu is awesome. Cthulhu is a great adaptation.
I really enjoy the Star Wars one, so...
Well, speaking of Star Wars, we played 3 games for the show. Phoenix, which of these 3 games... The Star Wars deck building game, Villainous, Star Wars, Power of the Dark Side, or the Star Wars Clone Wars. Which of these games was your favorite?
At the moment, the deck builder. I still love it. It helped me get more comfortable with deck building games, and that's where I gravitate to now is deck building games. So I'll have to put that at the top for me. So,
and then I'm assuming Clone Wars too. Like, what is the potential for Clone Wars for you? Like, could it overtake Pandemic as like your favorite Pandemic thing, or do you think that Pandemic is pretty well cemented there?
It's an interesting question. I mean, with Pandemic, the base game, you have so many expansions that can change the way you play it. If you play all the expansions or just 2 of them, it creates a lot of different nuances to the game. I think that will probably always stay at the top, and Clone Wars will probably be below it. So
interesting. Well, Burns, what was your favorite out of the 3 games we played for the show?
Yeah, for me it was Clone Wars. The deck building game. I think the deck building game was fun, but there was a lot more meat on the bones of the Clone Wars game, I felt, and. I feel like it's just there's a little bit more to it, more strategy that you have to come up with. I mean, there's strategy obviously with the deck building game. And I don't know, and maybe it's just if I played like 6 more games of the deck building game and don't run into edge cases on like 2 of them again, like then maybe I'll have a little bit better understanding of the balance of the deck building game comparatively. But for me, I think the Clone Wars was just more interesting and fun, and it felt a little bit more epic scale, which I think from the Star Wars universe is kind of what you're looking for, is kind of this sort of more epic kind of battle. So to me, that felt like the strongest of the 3 games.
For me, it's the deck builder. I love it. I can play it endlessly, again and again and again. Even though I don't like the Clone Wars, I do want to get that expansion and keep building on our deck builder experience. I love the deck building mechanic. I love buying cards and killing Chewbacca.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for the expansion for the deck building. I like the replayability, but it would be kind of fun to add a little bit of nuance to the deck building game. So, the end of this month, it's supposed to be out.
Yeah, by the time people hear this.
Yeah, so.
Well, speaking of next month, for the next episode of Outside is Overrated, Joey, Adam, and I are going dark for a special Halloweenish theme show for October, Darkest Dungeon. We're playing Darkest Dungeon 2 and the Darkest Dungeon board game. Burns, is it fair to say that Darkest Dungeon 2 is your game of the decade so far?
I don't know. People will have to tune in next month to find out.
Oh, that's a yes. Thank you so much for listening to Outside is Overrated. Please review us on your favorite podcast platform and consider supporting our show on Patreon at patreon.com/OiO. For Joey Burns at HobbyBoxBurns and Phoenix at Phoenix Sidlogic OiO, I'm Tom Sidlogic at Tom Sidlogic OiO. We'll talk to you next month. Stay inside, kids.